Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening, then go game. Hee. Hearing someone enjoy his cooking like this, Yaru couldn't help but feel a bit happy. There weren't many wings. After finishing them together, Gabriel downed her juice in one go and collapsed onto the couch, completely unbothered by appearances. While Yaru wiped his mouth with a napkin, Gabriel even gave him a look, silently asking him to help. That kind of behavior was unusually intimate. Even new couples wouldn't do that. Gabriel didn't care, and Yaru just wiped her mouth clean without complaint. After tossing out the chicken bones and used parchment, cleanup was done. Yaru sat back on the couch, very close to Gabriel. They chatted for a while, and then Gabriel left. Back home, Gabriel, having packed up her luggage, stared longingly at her laptop. She had just pulled a Gaka and wasn't finished playing yet. Then it happened. A golden halo slowly appeared above her head, and a pair of adorable, pure little wings emerged from behind her. Holy light flashed. In a blink, Gabriel and her luggage vanished from the room without a trace. Too bad Yaru didn't know Gabriel was an angel. One who could easily destroy the world. With a friend like her, what did he have to worry about? After Gabriel left, Yaru sighed and fell into another wave of loneliness and boredom. It was still early. He studied in his room for 2 hours. When he came out, it still wasn't noon. He browsed some recipes and practiced a few new low-fat dishes for lunch. That made him feel a little more productive, but he had nothing to do again in the afternoon. Empty. Bored to the point of frustration. Maybe I should go get a job. Make some money, buy some gifts, and feel more fulfilled. When Yaru had been in the hospital, he felt like time wasn't worth much and there wasn't enough of it. Now, it was the exact opposite. Without expecting much, Yaru grabbed his phone, threw on a baseball cap, and headed out. It wasn't like he had to find a job. It was more about killing time. He walked aimlessly. Before he realized it, Yaru had arrived at Shuchin's business street. Desolate. Looking around, there were barely more than 10 people on the whole street. This area wasn't a commercial district. It only flourished because of Shuchin Academy. So many shops are closed. Yaru walked quietly in the direction of the school. A while later, he spotted a cafe on the opposite side of the street. It had no sign, its glass doors were wide open, and it clearly hadn't been fully renovated. It was the same one Yua had gone into before. There was a notice board hanging out front. Yaru glanced down the road. A Honda sedan was coming from far away. He quickened his pace and walked up to the cafe. Inside was a mess. No one seemed to be around. Yaru peeked inside a few times before walking over to the notice board. Notice board, hiring a short-term worker. Male only. Must be strong. Work hours, 12:30 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. every afternoon. Job description, help me. Do. Yaru thought about it. This job was exactly what he was looking for. Short-term, light hours in the afternoon, decent pay, and barely anyone around. The mature yet youthful air radiated perfectly from Uegahama-yi. At this moment, she was in the cafe's staff break room. Sitting on the small bed, her face was flushed red, chest heaving, and her smooth forehead glistened with sweat. A few strands of hair clung to it, highlighting the charm of this seemingly young madam. Uegahama-yi slowly parted her full, enticing lips and exhaled a sweet, almost poisonous sigh. Her fair and delicate fingers held a phone, which had just finished playing a video. Just from those hands, no one would guess she was nearly 40. Old enough to be Yoru's mother. Don't get the wrong idea. Uegahama-yi was just using her break to watch my love mix-up. She wasn't doing anything weird. That's it. That wasn't nearly enough. Putting her phone away, a hint of loneliness surfaced on Yi's mature yet youthful face. Watching dramas daily was one of her few ways to pass the time. Mrs. Uegahama liked to watch romance shows about young people. Soon-misan. Anyone here? Yoru stepped into the cafe, glanced around, and shouted loudly. The sudden voice snapped Yi out of her thoughts. Her body froze, and she accidentally dropped her phone. She quickly bent down to pick it up and stepped out to check what was going on. In that moment of bending, her mature and voluptuous figure was on full display. Yet she looked so young. Hello. There's someone here. Yi picked up her phone and rushed out of the simple staff break room. Outside the cafe, she saw a slightly chubby boy, probably around the same age as her daughter. Ah, hello. I'm here to apply for the job. Yoru turned his neck and locked eyes with Yi. For a moment, he thought she was Yuagahama Yue. But after a second look, he knew that wasn't it. Yuagahama was a bit shorter. Among girls her age, she had an excellent figure, but still couldn't compare to the mature yet youthful charm of the woman before him. It was impossible to tell her real age. Her beauty and aura far surpassed Yue's. And you are? Yi stepped in front of Yoru and examined him carefully. My name's Kitakami Yoru. I saw the notice outside and wanted to apply for the job. Facing this unbelievably mature woman, Yoru stood stiffly, extremely self-conscious. Is that so? Let me explain then. Standing about 2 meters apart, Yi smiled gently and began to speak slowly. In the dust-scented cafe, Yoru just stood there, nodding dumbly while taking in the job description. Every so often, his nose would pick up a subtle, comforting fragrance that gradually put him at ease. He knew clearly. It was her scent. A few minutes later, Yi finished explaining. All right, no problem. I can start right away. Yoru nodded, confirming the details. His job was to show up daily at the cafe at the scheduled time. He didn't need to be busy all the time. The place was still under renovation, and professional workers were handling most of it. He just needed to help Yi with physical tasks occasionally. When there wasn't anything, he could rest freely. That's great. Just call me Manager Yuagahama. Yi smiled kindly. Seeing that, Yoru's heart suddenly started pounding faster. He got flustered. Thump, thump, thump. His chest throbbed violently. The last time he felt this was at Teriri's house. What is it, Yoru-kun? Yi's voice was gentle. In her eyes, this boy was the same age as her daughter. To her, he was just a boy. May I ask? Are you Yuagahama Yue's sister? As soon as Yoru heard the name Yuagahama, he already had a guess. Huh? Yi was stunned, blinking with surprise. Her orange eyes widened. You're not? Yoru frowned slightly. Yoru-kun, are you one of Yue's classmates? Realizing the situation, Yi's face stayed calm, but deep down, she was a little happy. What the heck? I'm this old. And yet, my daughter's classmate mistook me for her sister. Yes, we're classmates. We're kind of in the same club too. Yoru stepped back a bit, rubbing the back of his head shyly. Since he went to the service club every day, that wasn't a lie. Really? So you're Yue's classmate? Hee hee. Finally, Yi couldn't help but lightly cover her mouth and let out a soft chuckle. Yoru lowered his head, a little embarrassed. Then Yi winked playfully and teased him, actually, Yoru-kun. She drew out the end of her sentence. Yoru looked up with innocent eyes. I'm Yue's mother. Those words hit like thunder. It was like a war had just broken out in his ears. Echoes of what she said kept repeating in his head. Surprised? I didn't know I looked so young myself. Hee hee. Now that Yi knew Yoru was in the same class and club as her daughter, she became even more friendly. Happily, she patted her collagen-rich cheeks. Looking both adorable and captivating. Yoru nervously gulped, unsure how to respond. He even wanted to flee. Facing the mother of his classmate, he felt extremely restrained. The age gap was just too real. He and Yuagahama Yui were the same age, so naturally, her mom could be his mom too. No. What the hell kind of logic is that? His mind was a mess, but on the surface, he kept up a respectful appearance, which Yi noticed. She gently called him over. Since she was so easygoing, Yoru soon pushed aside the complex emotions and settled down. He began to get familiar with the cafe, which was still under renovation. Following Yi around, Yoru didn't even dare look directly at her from behind. That perfectly shaped, curvy figure. Just thinking about spending time alone with Yi in the cafe made Yoru extra cautious. This was someone older than him. Not just any adult, but his classmate's mother. Chapter 80, Yi gave Yoru a quick tour of the unfinished cafe. The staff break room, kitchen, restroom, emergency exit. The place wasn't small. About the size of 2 classrooms, maybe more. The rent must be pretty expensive. Yoru followed behind Yi, keeping his gaze respectfully low and proper. But that large, round, bouncy butt. It was way too tempting. A while later, Yi led him to the rough counter area and pulled out a business plan, motioning to him. Yoru-kun, could you help me take a look at this business proposal? I have 2 cafes already, but they're not aimed at students. Now I'd like to get your opinion. She opened a sketch of the layout. Yoru leaned in slightly, maintaining distance. His nose was filled with that unique fragrance from her body. Yuagahama-san's mom smells so good. He mentally braced himself and finally looked at the sketch. The diagram simply and clearly outlined the layout of the cafe and seating arrangements. Yi said she wasn't a beginner and had plenty of experience. Judging by the sketch, that was definitely true. Yoru started thinking seriously. Yi didn't rush him. She just watched him with a gentle smile. Noticing this, Yoru's muscles began to tense. He was getting shy again. It's okay. Come a bit closer. Yi definitely noticed his awkwardness. She smiled and waved him over gently. To her, Yoru was just a slightly older kid. The kind she could easily be a mother to. It's okay, I can see just fine. Yoru's body jolted slightly as he quickly shook his head. After saying that, Yoru immediately pointed at the floor plan and shared a few suggestions. I think, since the cafe is located near a commercial street, the main business will come from Shuchin Academy students. They're the ones spending the money. 80% of the customers will be them. There are some nearby residents and passers-by, but not many. Yoru looked at Yi's mature and lovely face, his tone a bit rushed and uncertain. Damn, Yuagahama's mom is seriously beautiful. And so young. From the very beginning, a strange feeling had been stirring inside Yoru. The source of that emotion was none other than Yi. Mostly shyness, awkwardness. He couldn't quite explain it. It just felt weird. Keep going. Yi pulled out a small notepad and a pen, flipping to a fresh page, ready to take notes. As for the seating, I think you can scrap the single-seat tables. Most of the students come in pairs or groups. And then, right over here. Yoru pointed toward the wall and walked over. What about this spot? Yi asked. You can mimic fast food restaurants and install a long bar counter here, sectioned into individual cubicles. Perfect for solo customers. Yoru touched the unpainted, raw concrete wall, then moved toward the corner and looked at Yi. Near the counter, but away from the entrance. In this slightly quieter corner. You can set up a private booth for 2 to 4 people. It can be a little secluded space for couples on dates, or close friends who want to chat in private. That's a great idea. Anything else? Yi was genuinely taking notes seriously. You keep learning all your life. Even PhDs, professors, and experts are always trying to improve themselves. Let alone someone like her. A hopeless widow who lost her husband early. You could also place a free bookshelf at the entrance, somewhere obvious when people walk in. Stock it with popular manga and light novels. Yoru scratched the back of his head, a little embarrassed, as he looked at Yi. That's wonderful, really helpful advice. Thank you, Yoru-kun. Yi beamed, closing the notepad. No need to thank me, Manager Yuagahama. Honestly, just having you here is enough to guarantee steady customer traffic. Yoru nodded, sneaking another glance at Yi while grumbling internally. After a short break, Yi began explaining Yoru's actual tasks. They were pretty simple. Since the cafe was under renovation, she needed someone to help with basic labor and odd jobs. Like fixing a faucet and handing over a wrench. Helping with layout setup and holding a ladder. Sometimes pitching in physically, or just supervising. Professional work would still be done by hired experts. When there's nothing to do, he could just rest somewhere. There were no other responsibilities. After going over everything, and answering Kasui's questions while keeping up the respectful junior act, the cafe's new signboard arrived. They stepped outside together. 2 workers from the sign company, dressed in blue uniforms, began installing the shopfront signage. Angel Cafe? Yoru looked at the simple black sign with white lettering and muttered. The workday ended in the afternoon. Yoru headed home. He changed into slippers, turned on the TV, and picked up Sansan to cuddle. So she's really Yuagahama's mom. She's way too young. Don't you think so, Sansan? Yoru gently stroked Sansan's round little head as he spoke. Sure, his own mom was also young. But that was more in terms of looks. The vibe was totally different. Yuagahama's mom not only looked young, she had a face that was both youthful and mature, and her figure. Well, it was truly something else. So jealous of Yuagahama's dad. Thinking like that was rude and disrespectful. He had to control himself. Last day of July. Early morning. Only 6:00 a.m. Yoru's internal clock woke him up right on time. Starting today, he had updated his running distance to 1,500 meters. He flipped out of bed, tossed aside the thin blanket, put on his slippers, and left the room. He never understood why his parents always insisted he make the bed every morning. It's his room, his bed. Who's even going to see it? And at night, he just had to open it up again anyway. To Yoru, making the bed was dumb. He never did it. Gargle gargle. So today they're laying down the flooring at the cafe, right? Yoru spit out his mouthwash and neatly placed the toothpaste and brush back. It had been a little while since he started working at the cafe. He was gradually getting used to being around Yi. After brushing his teeth, he scratched his hair, which had gotten long enough to cover half his face. I'll cut it after I slim down. Once I really shed the weight, I wanna see a new me. He sighed and headed to the kitchen. Yoru looked at the recently renovated kitchen space he had cleared out for himself, along with all the new cookware he'd bought earlier. He hadn't missed a thing. He opened the fridge, drank some barley tea, and pulled out a sealed container of beef tenderloin. It was a whole piece he had prepared yesterday. He sliced it into thick, chopstick-sized beef strips and let them sit. Then he took out the oven tray, laid down parchment paper, sprayed on a little oil, and spread the beef on top before sliding it into the oven. Top heat, 200 degrees Celsius. Convection. Bottom heat, 180 degrees Celsius. Bake for 30 minutes. While waiting for the timer, Yoru poured cat food and water for Sansan and scratched the still sleepy cat's head. Time for deworming soon. And a booster shot too. 10 minutes later. A delicious aroma of beef mixed with spices filled the kitchen. Yoru filled a thermos with cold water, washed some grapes, and picked out a green apple. He changed shoes, grabbed his gym bag. It was 7 a.m. the sun still warm but not hot. Tokyo was just beginning to bustle. Yoru walked to the park, ready for his usual run. He left his bag at his usual spot and started warming up. The green trees swayed gently in the breeze. It was a pleasant scene. Breathing the fresh air, Yoru jogged slowly, clearing his mind. At 1,200 meters, he couldn't keep it up. He just wasn't fit enough to run the full 1,500. So for the last 300 meters, he walked. For someone like him, a borderline chubby guy, that was already a decent result. After a short rest, Yoru lifted his shirt to help cool down and casually made his way back. Meanwhile, Fujiwara Chika was at the park's artificial lake. She had a habit of morning runs too, and needed to take Pess out, or the dog would go wild at home. Psst, I'll let you off the leash, but don't eat random stuff again, got it? What if someone put poison in a sausage, or hid chocolate inside? You'd be tricked and that'd be it. Chika crouched, one hand gripping P's collar, the other wagging her finger as she solemnly warned her dog. Ps was a bit of a glutton. Woof. Woof woof. Ps barked rhythmically, staring at Chika with wide eyes. Go on. Just don't scare anyone. After glancing around, Chika let Ps go. Woof. The dog barked and bolted. Yoru was walking back when he suddenly heard a bark behind him. You again? He turned around, surprised to see the familiar Ps rushing toward him. Whose dog was this, again? He had already run into it 3 times. Aside from the time Yoru fed it a sandwich, he had also encountered Ps once during his morning jog the day before yesterday. What Yoru didn't know was that although Ps didn't get walked as frequently as Yoru jogged, it still got taken out 3 to 4 times a week. Ps ran up to Yoru, tongue out and tail wagging, circling around him non-stop. The dog was well behaved and smart, so Yoru didn't feel the need to chase it off. He walked back to where he had left his shoulder bag and sat down for a drink of water. Ps obediently lay down at Yoru's feet, panting and drooling in anticipation. The smell of meat. So good. Don't rush, you'll get some. Sit. Yoru looked down at Ps and snapped in a firm tone. Woof. Pace barked once and immediately sat down, staring up at Yoru obediently. Open your mouth. Yoru pulled out a few slices of juicy, flavorful grilled beef from his bag. Woof. Woof. Pace held back its cravings, barked twice in a friendly tone, and opened its mouth. Good. Well done. It wasn't Yoru's first time training a dog. He had trained the little golden retriever this same way long ago. Ps raised its head, barked once, and wagged its tail wildly at Yoru. Yoru tossed 2 pieces of grilled beef to it, then finished off the rest himself. After eating a few grapes and a green apple, he left the park. Ps ran back to find Fujiwara Chika. Ps, you snuck food again? Chika's expression darkened as she noticed something off. Woof. Woof. Whine. Ps whimpered guiltily and began pawing at itself, trying to convey something. It wanted to say, it didn't sneak food. Someone kindly fed it. Alright, you're grounded for 3 days. No going out. But Chika wasn't a dog and couldn't understand what Ps was trying to say. Later that afternoon, Yoru put on a baseball cap and headed out to work at the cafe. When he arrived, workers were laying down tiles. It was just a cafe renovation, probably only 2 or 3 days worth of work. Yoru-kun, I'll leave it to you to keep an eye on things. Make sure nothing goes wrong. Once the workers leave, just lock up. Yuagahamayi had thrown on a long outer coat, probably to avoid getting her clothes dirty. But it didn't cover her curvy figure at all. In fact, the contrast only added to her charm. Got it. Yoru nodded. Getting paid to sit around all afternoon? Easy money. Here, the key. Yi handed over a key. Yoru reached out and took it immediately. Thanks a bunch. Her mature, cute face wore a gentle smile. Before Yoru could respond, she stepped past him. A faint fragrance wafted by. Her soft, fair hand gently patted Yoru's shoulder. It was an unintentional gesture from Yi as a senior. Yoru instinctively stood straight, his muscles tensing up. August 7th. Yoru was in the shower after finishing his morning jog and some additional cardio, washing himself off. In front of the full-length mirror, he rubbed his damp hair with 2 fingers. 175. That was his current weight. Just measured, fresh and exact. It gets harder the further you go. He muttered in dissatisfaction. Still, his weight loss speed had been insane. From a 300-pound behemoth who couldn't even run straight, to a mildly chubby guy hovering just above the average line. It hadn't taken long at all. If it were about gaining weight, not even pigs bulk up as fast as Yoru had. And yet, he still wasn't satisfied. My face is still fat. The stubborn fat just won't go. My waist and thighs too. Yoru sighed softly, turned off the shower, and dried himself off. After getting dressed, he walked out. In the kitchen, he looked for some fruit to eat. The fridge was empty. So he decided to head out and buy something. He grabbed some cash and his phone and went out without locking the door. While scrolling through the news on his phone, Yoru headed downstairs. At the stairwell corner, he ran into Nanami. Morning, Aoyama-san. Haven't seen you in a while. Yoru was the first to greet her. Though they lived in the same apartment building. He on the 4th floor and she on the 2nd. Their daily routines were different. They didn't run into each other often. Morning. Where are you off to? And wow, you've really slimmed down, Kitakami-kun. So fast too. Nanami wasn't in a hurry. She looked at Yoru, whose damp hair hung down and covered much of his face. Her mind wandered back to the first time she'd met him. Back then, he was really fat. She recalled his earlier kindness to her and how she had misunderstood him. That lingering guilt and her desire to make up for it had never quite gone away. She had only buried it temporarily. Well, I've been working hard to lose weight. But it's getting harder and harder. The fat on my face is especially stubborn. My body still looks kind of fat. As he spoke, a droplet slid down from Yoru's hanging hair. Here's a simple analogy. Say a person's normal weight is 120 pounds. If they binge and gain 50 pounds quickly, most of the fat accumulates around the belly waist, and the face doesn't change much. Their facial features aren't dramatically affected. But if someone weighs 300 pounds, they're fat everywhere. The stubborn fat builds up all over. Not just around the waist and belly. So even though Yoru had lost a lot of weight, his situation was very different from others. There's a difference between someone slowly gaining to 170 pounds and someone slimming down to 170 pounds. Looks are mostly determined by facial features. And if your face is fat, how can that look good? In all his years, Yoru had never seen a fat person who was truly good looking. Being fat ruins everything. That held true worldwide. No worries. You're already pretty slim. Hardly a fatty anymore. Nanami looked him over. Compared to those pot-bellied middle-aged office workers, Yoru was only slightly chubby. He was no longer that exaggerated sumo-sized guy. Thanks. Yoru nodded slightly. As he spoke, another droplet fell from his hair. TCH. A little annoyed, Yoru brushed his hair back and pushed it over his head. He stood right in front of Nanami. She hadn't been paying close attention, but once she saw his face clearly, she froze. All her attention locked onto Yoru's face. How to put it? Still a bit chubby, but his clean, defined features were beginning to show. Handsome. Charming. He was already a good-looking guy. Nanami thought seriously about it. Despite his still slightly round face, his looks already surpassed many of the boys at school. What's wrong? Yoru noticed the pretty girl in front of him spacing out and asked curiously. And nothing. I just remembered something about my voice acting exam. Zoned out a bit. Prideful and a little shy, Nanami wasn't about to admit she got distracted because Yoru had become handsome. An exam? Good luck, then. Yoru didn't have much else to say, so he simply encouraged Nanami. It's still early. I've got at least a few months to prepare. Nanami shifted her gaze away from Yoru's now handsome face and smiled shyly. Well, see you. I'm heading out to buy a few things. Yoru waved and walked downstairs. Nanami didn't go straight home. Instead, she stared at Yoru's back and muttered under her breath, he really became a handsome guy. If he slims down all the way, just how hot is he gonna get? Not to mention, What kind of crappy hairstyle was Yoru even keeping right now? If he just cleaned himself up a little, his face alone would rival Hayato. For some reason, Nanami found herself looking forward to it. But right now, Yoru hadn't fully realized his own attractiveness. He was slimming down way too fast. Just 2 months ago, he was still a big guy. Even for someone without an easy-to-gain fat body, a result like his would take at least a year of solid effort. And that's assuming very serious commitment. Because of this, while Yoru's appearance had undergone a major upgrade, his sense of self still lagged behind, stuck in the past. Humans are visual creatures. Sometimes, you look in the mirror and think, hey, I'm kind of handsome. Other times, you stare into the same mirror and wonder, who the hell is that ugly dude? When did I become so gross? And don't even get started on the difference between a mirror and a phone camera. It's like night and day. After a shower, when his hair's still wet, Yoru might feel super good looking. But the truth was, having been overweight for so long, he carried a deeply ingrained self-loathing. He'd instinctively brainwashed himself, forming a fixed image. Just thinking of himself or catching sight in a mirror triggered thoughts like, I'm just a disgusting, ugly, fat loser. He never saw any value in his looks, and didn't know how to evaluate himself. It's like how someone from one culture might find beauty in features that someone from another culture wouldn't. In Yoru's mind, all he could see was that his face was still kind of chubby, still packed with stubborn fat. Therefore, ugly. But in reality, even though he hadn't slimmed down completely, his current looks already rivaled the most handsome guys at school. Guys like that were rare in such an academy. Surrounded by girls who constantly flocked around them. Even if Yoru stopped losing weight right now, just by getting a haircut and showing up to school with his current face, he'd attract tons of admirers. Yoru went to the supermarket and bought 2 bags of food. Mostly meat, seafood, vegetables, and fruit. No snacks. He still didn't dare eat those. Back home, he pulled out the handwritten notes Yukino had made for him and studied them seriously. Even during summer break, he carved out 2 hours a day for review. With his tenfold boost, he was making rapid progress. He had basically self-studied and mastered all of last semester's material. After finishing his daily routine, it was around 11:30 a.m. Yoru had a simple lunch, played with San for a bit, then headed to Angel Cafe for work with his long hair still down. The cafe's renovations had already finished 2 days ago. The latex paint was dry, the tile floors laid. Now it just needed final touches. Furniture set up, booths arranged, equipment installed. Everything would be ready by the start of the new semester. Wearing a black baseball cap and a loose short-sleeved shirt, Yoru left the house. Around 12:30, he arrived at the cafe right on time. At the door. Woof woof. Yu's dog Sable barked happily at him. It still remembered the beef jerky treats Yoru had given it. Who is it? Yui rushed out from the staff room after hearing the barking. When she saw the slightly chubby guy wearing a black cap with his face hidden by long hair, she was first startled, then puzzled. It's me, Yuigahama-san, haha. Yoru gave a sheepish but cheerful smile. Had he slimmed down so fast even Yuigahama couldn't recognize him? Kitakami-kun? You. Yuigahama's eyes widened in disbelief. She'd known he was losing weight before finals, and his changes were already noticeable. But now, after just over a month without seeing him, the transformation was shocking. I'm fine. Just a body type thing. I gain weight fast, but I lose it fast too. Yoru made up an excuse. He had worked hard for it, drop by drop of sweat, with time to transition. Sure, others were surprised, but no one would think it unnatural or scary. Now if he had slimmed down overnight? That would be terrifying. They might have even dragged him to a government lab for research. A walking meat sample goldmine. Really? Well, congrats then. Yua swallowed nervously, then laughed and accepted it with a grin. Yaha. Yoru-kun's here. Yuigahama came out, standing behind her daughter. In that moment, the vibrant and cute Yua seemed to fade into the background. Just another ordinary girl. Yi was the true jewel, radiant and rare. Next to her, her daughter paled in comparison. Any man would know exactly who he'd pick. Manager Yuigahama. Yoru looked at Yi and gave an awkward little bow. It's fine. There's still some time. You two chat. I'm going to watch my romance dramas. Yi waved them off and went back to the break room. Ho. Yoru took off his hat, letting his hair breathe as he sighed in relief. He always felt tense and pressured around Yi. His classmate's mom. Yeah. Want something to drink? Yu offered. Thanks. Yoru nodded and brushed a handful of hair back, revealing his face for a few seconds. Yua turned away at first but turned back around, her soft pink lips parting slightly and her eyes blinking rapidly. Was she imagining it? She thought. Did he just look super handsome? As she secretly muttered in her heart, her eyes locked onto Yoru's face, practically burning through him. But his hair fell forward again. She couldn't see. That little glimpse sparked a burning curiosity, and if she just had to scratch. Yui waved a hand and headed to the kitchen to get Yoru some water. After all, drinking meant tilting your head back a bit, right? Soon, Yui came back with a drink and walked up to Yoru. He was sitting in a back chair, just as she hoped. Thanks. Yoru had the ability to read minds, but he didn't abuse it. And definitely didn't keep it on all the time. Yui didn't leave right away. She crossed her arms and tried to hide her curiosity, watching Yoru casually. She hadn't gotten a good look before. Click. The bottle cap popped. Yoru ran his fingers through his hair, brushing it aside to reveal his full face. He leaned back slightly and took a sip. So handsome. Yui stared wide-eyed at him, then suddenly gasped, realizing what she'd just thought. She quickly turned around and covered her mouth. She had seen clearly. Yoru had become super handsome. No way, seriously? It's only been just over a month and he lost that much weight. He really turned into a hottie. His face is still a bit chubby, but once school starts, no one's going to call him a disgusting fat otaku pervert anymore, right? He'll probably be super popular. Yui took her hand off her mouth and slowly turned her head, trying to catch another glimpse of Yoru's face from the corner of her eye. And then... never mind. He let his hair fall down again. Yoru-kun must be really happy right now, suddenly turning into a handsome guy. Not being able to see Yoru's face anymore, Yui relaxed. Strange, really. Some girls go weak in the knees when they see a handsome guy and can't help but scream in excitement. Meanwhile, Yoru, quietly sipping his drink, was completely unaware that his good looks had already left two beautiful girls stunned today. That afternoon, a large delivery truck pulled up with 6 workers, carrying chairs, tables, and booth sofas for the cafe. The workers were responsible for moving the booth sofas inside and roughly positioning them where you wanted them. But they weren't going to take the time to consider aesthetics or precise spacing and do fine adjustments. So now, it was time for Yoru to lend his strength. That was also why Yui had come over to help this afternoon. The regular chairs were rattan woven with wooden frames. Not very heavy. The heavy stuff was the tables and booth sofas. Yi had even taken Yoru's suggestion and added a row of single-seat bar tables along the wall, like in a fast food place. Holes had been drilled in the wall, with grooves left in the floor to support them. Under Yi's direction, the workers brought everything in piece by piece. After half an hour, it was finally time for the 3 of them to get to work. These booth sofas are pretty heavy. Yoru-kun, I'll be counting on you to help me push them into place, okay? You just take care of the chairs. Yi smiled sweetly at Yoru, lips curved softly. There was no room for refusal. Yoru responded by walking to the opposite side of the sofa from Yi and placing his large hands on it. Let's push it together, up against the wall should be fine. Yi kept her gentle, cute expression as she got ready to push with effort. No problem, I'm pretty strong. Even back when Yoru had been obese, he was strong. During his weight loss plan, 70% had been cardio, but the other 30% was strength training. Losing fat while building muscle. Otherwise, your skin would get all saggy. Things were going well. None of the bad outcomes he feared had came to pass. Together, Yoru and Yi pushed the several hundred-pound booth sofa into position. The cafe was pretty spacious. It could easily seat an entire class of students. Yui didn't have the strength for this kind of heavy labor, so Yoru and Yi had to handle it together. But that didn't matter. There wasn't too much to do. Half an hour tops. The real point was that Yoru was constantly walking and working alongside Yi. If they weren't lifting things face to face, they were close enough to feel each other's breath while moving furniture. Yoru wasn't all that tired. No flushed face, no shortness of breath. His usual training hadn't gone to waste. It was paying off now. In the end, Yi was still a woman. Even with a bit more strength than most, it wasn't enough. Soon, her gentle, mature face turned bright red. Her perfect figure became even more apparent as she moved, her full lips parting slightly as she panted. Beads of fragrant sweat gathered on her face, soaking her tied-up orange hair. Yoru started to feel uncomfortable. Yi could easily be his mom's age. She was his classmate Yui's mom. And Yui was standing right there. Holding back a wave of temptation, Yoru couldn't help but feel an odd, forbidden thrill every time he looked at Yi. Thankfully, the work was finally done. Angel Cafe was starting to take shape. Yoru-kun, you've really lost so much weight. Phew. When we go back to school, everyone's going to be shocked. Yui panted slightly as she sat down beside Yoru to rest. Really? Yoru smiled, clenching and then relaxing his fists. If Kasamijoka Utah and everyone at school finds out I'm not the one who stole the panties and stockings, they're gonna be even more shocked. I wonder if Ariri has spoken to Kasamijoka yet. School's starting in just over 20 days. And there's still another golden treasure chest. One that hasn't appeared yet. I used to think only bad girls had those treasure chests above their heads, but Megami didn't, and neither did Hayasaka, and they never hurt me. In Japan, high school is divided into 3 terms. April is the start of the first term, September the 2nd, and January the 3rd. That gift you were talking about earlier. Did you get it? Is it for you, Kainan? Yui fanned herself with her small hand. Yeah, I've got half of it ready. It's not just for Yuki Noshida, but also for Hiratsuka-sensei. Yoru didn't mention Fujiwara-chika. Hiratsuka-sensei, huh? I see. That's complicated. Yui turned back around and nodded slightly as she rested. Yoru was thinking about the golden treasure chests. Megami's had given him the power of mind reading and time reversal. Ariri's had 2 crazy buffs. One let him lose weight, study, and cook at an insane pace. Like a tenfold return on effort. The other was a little good luck buff. It gave him bursts of good fortune, helping him avoid accidents and misfortune. That luck showed up in all kinds of ways. Most obviously, Yoru had won a pair ticket for a 2-night, 3-day trip in Kanagawa. He met Akino's Hanami on that trip and accidentally overheard a conversation between her and that girl San-san. That probably counted? And that silver-haired cold beauty from middle school. He didn't know her, but they'd had a brief encounter. Then there was. Yoru touched his still slightly chubby cheeks. In the mirror, he still saw a round face. But maybe that charm that makes the girls like you more as you grow. That was the typical light novel protagonist aura. That, and the powers of a certain Jin main character. And finally, a strange magical force with no clear description. Yoru really had no clue what it was. Totally matched the vague name of that buff, though. Still lost in thought, Yoru stood up and walked toward the restroom. The door was closed, meaning Yi was inside. Keeping a respectful distance, Yoru leaned against a wall, idly playing with his long hair. He grabbed it, loosened it, let it fall again. In his mind, he still saw himself as a gross fat otaku, his face still too round. But what Yoru didn't realize was that his features were no longer squished together under 300 pounds of fat. He no longer had that revolting mess of sagging skin. Now in the mildly overweight range, his proportions were starting to balance out. His facial features had begun to emerge, showing hints of extraordinary attractiveness. No matter what country you put him in, Yoru's face now met the local definition of handsome. Right now, he was like a rare flower bud, just starting to bloom. He just needed a little more time to fully blossom. And amaze everyone around him. Clunk. He opened the door and saw Yoru standing outside. Come to think of it, Yoru-kun's weight loss progress was insane. He'd visibly slimmed down. She wondered what kind of diet and workout plan he'd used. Could she try it too? Maybe they could exercise together? Yi still cared a lot about maintaining her perfect figure. Lately, she'd been feeling it was getting a bit too full. She was about to speak when Yoru grabbed his hair again, revealing a slightly chubby but undeniably handsome face as he walked toward the restroom. Eh? Yoru-kun? Yi's lips parted slightly in surprise. Not long ago, Yoru's face had been too pudgy to see his features. Could someone like that even be good-looking? But now, just from slimming down a bit, he'd become incredibly handsome. It was shocking. What's wrong, Manager Uegahama? Yoru stepped in front of her, slightly turning his body, avoiding direct eye contact. You've lost so much weight. Yi, knowing Yoru was heading in, leaned against the wall and stepped out of the way. She hadn't expected that she'd gotten so exhausted earlier and had to sit on the toilet a bit longer to recover. The floor near the restroom was slick and a bit damp. Hard to keep her footing. Yui lost control of her body and stumbled forward, falling directly toward Yoru. Yoru hadn't dared to look at her. They were already standing just a step apart, and he didn't react in time. His attempt to catch her came too late. Yi, driven by instinct, flailed her hands toward Yoru to grab something. Likewise, Yoru's first reaction upon seeing someone fall was to reach out and catch them. But he was too slow. In the narrow hallway, just wide enough for 2 adult men to squeeze through, Yi ended up tackling Yoru. It all happened in less than half a second. Yoru instinctively tried to brace himself with one arm behind his back, hoping to soften the impact and avoid injury. But in a flash, Yi had pushed him to the floor. Yoru fell mostly straight, the back of his head lightly bumping the ground. One palm hit the floor, with his elbow barely holding him up. He hadn't absorbed much of the shock. His other hand flailed against the wall, totally helpless. Yi, meanwhile, landed squarely on his abdomen, knees hitting the ground, body leaning forward. One hand clenched tightly onto Yoru's shirt, the other hung in the air. Their faces were practically touching. Yoru's hair spilled down, brushing his ears, with a few strands covering his slightly plump but handsome face. He froze, mind blank. All he could feel was the soft pressure of two heavy mounds weighing down on his stomach. Pleasant, but heavy. Those two mounds were really substantial. And his nose was filled with sweet, almost intoxicating fragrance. You're crushing me. Yoru's lungs felt like they were being twisted and compressed, his breath growing shorter. If she sat on his face, he might actually suffocate. Hearing the strained groans from below, Yi didn't react right away. From above, her wide, watery eyes stared dazedly at the young face beneath her. His hair loose, his features youthful and striking. He looked just like the male leads in the romance dramas she liked. Chapter 81, Yi's full, curvy body pressed heavily against Yoru's belly. Her body leaned forward, and their eyes met on the same level. Her small, delicate hand still clutched his shirt, stretching it. This kind of position usually only showed up in R-rated scenes. A manager. Yuagahama. Whether it was from being crushed or from sheer nervousness, Yoru was struggling to breathe and started twisting his waist. He flailed his legs and squirmed from side to side. His nose was overwhelmed with Yi's natural scent, a mix of perfume and sweat, leaving him strangely addicted. Huh? Still holding that awkward position, Yi blinked, her mind slowly coming back online. Though sluggish, her eyes stayed fixed on Yoru's face, now so close to hers. Slightly chubby but undeniably handsome. Her body refused to move. Manager Yuagahama. Yoru forced the words out and gently tapped her shoulder. Ah. Yi finally snapped out of it, gasping several times before scrambling to push herself up with hands and knees. Phew. Yoru's face was red all the way to his ears. Who could say why? Yi got off his stomach. Yoru, finally able to breathe, sat up right away. Sorry, Yoru-kun. I was so exhausted, my legs just gave out. And the floor was slippery. I didn't mean to fall on you. Yi leaned against the wall, looking down at Yoru and apologizing sheepishly. It's fine, Manager Yuagahama. I'm okay. Yoru wasn't hurt. Just a little dazed from breathing in that intoxicating scent of her perfume and sweat. Here, take my hand. Yi reached out her small hand, grabbing his wrist to help him up. And no, I'm good. Yoru reacted like he'd been shocked. His arm shook visibly, and he quickly pulled away. Yi noticed and smiled faintly. So he's just shy. What an unexpectedly innocent boy. Did you hit the back of your head? Does it hurt? Smiling warmly, Yi reached out with both hands toward his head. She was probably trying to tilt it down to check for any swelling and maybe help rub it out. No need, Manager Yuagahama. Really, thank you. Yoru looked nervous, his lower back tingling. He shook his head quickly. No need to be shy around an auntie. You could practically be my son. Hey. Yi giggled softly, brushing aside a few orange strands of hair from her ear. I get it, I'll. Yoru looked restless and pointed toward the restroom. Oh, sorry. I forgot you were heading in. Yi stepped aside in surprise. Yoru slipped past her and closed the door behind him. Yi suddenly let out a soft chuckle. Mom? What just happened? Yua came running, curious after hearing the noise. But she was too late. It's nothing. Yi thought back to that steamy moment earlier. The mature, gentle woman who could easily be Yoru's mother. And who was Yua's mother? Had a rare flash of shyness in her calm eyes. Later that afternoon, the work was done. Yoru went home, stopped by the convenience store, and treated himself to a white-labeled sugar-free high-fiber cola. No issues for his diet. As soon as he got home, changed his shoes, and settled in, he pulled Sansan onto his lap and turned on the TV. The news was covering the recent rise in prices and summer heat. Someone had collapsed from heat stroke. There were odd foreign news clips too. But Yoru wasn't really paying attention. He just liked having some background noise. Phew. This afternoon was something else. How does Yuagahama-san's mom have a figure like that? So juicy and curvy, but still youthful and toned. Will Yuagahama-san turn out like that too someday? Those two really do look alike. Yoru thought silently to himself, sipping his cola in small gulps while resting. Toward evening, he went out to buy discounted groceries, some veggies, meat, flour, and nuts. Yoru planned to bake whole wheat bread at home. If he could do it himself, he wouldn't need to go out for it anymore. Time passed, and 3 days flew by. One morning, Yoru got up and hesitated at the scale. But skipped it. He knew there wouldn't be much change in just a few days. Still, his body was visibly trending toward normal. The only downside to losing weight so fast was that none of his old clothes fit anymore. Even his shoes. His feet had slimmed down, making his shoe size drop a bit. After washing up, making breakfast, and drinking some water, Yoru headed to the park for his usual morning run. Breathing in the fresh air, his goal was a steady 2,000 meters at a gentle pace. The park was vast, with only a few elderly folks and kids rustling about. The atmosphere was peaceful and pleasant. Today, Fujiwara Chika had lifted Ps's restriction and brought him out for a jog. Ps, you better not eat anything off the ground, got it? She scolded the dog that kept rolling on the ground, acting spoiled. Woof. 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 The smart little dog whimpered in protest. He'd never eaten anything bad. But no matter how much he tried to explain, Chika never understood. Sigh. All right, go on. She unhooked his collar and stayed behind to warm up. Ps bolted away joyfully. Honestly. Chika muttered to herself as she looked at Ps's back, still feeling she hadn't been strict enough. Yoru had already started his morning jog. Barely 1 kilometer in, his stamina was nearly drained, and he had to rely on sheer willpower to keep going. His pace gradually slowed. But if he could push through a little longer, it wouldn't be a problem. A few minutes later, with a few hundred meters to his goal, Yoru exhaled and began to walk slowly. At least he had managed to run 1,700 meters in one go without stopping. That was solid progress. As he walked the final short stretch, Ps appeared again, opening another lucky box of fortune. He was having a good luck streak today and ran straight over to see Yoru. Woof woof. The familiar barking came from behind. Yoru glanced at Ps and shook his head with a smile. Whose dog was this anyway? He kept running into it. Yoru ran his hand through his long, sweat-soaked hair. At the moment, his hairstyle looked a lot like the student council's treasurer, Ishigami Yu. Completely covering his face. Only when he looked up or down would his perfect features faintly show. Ps trotted in front of Yoru, cheerfully spinning in place. Following him closely, Ps walked to a neatly trimmed flower bed. Yoru checked his phone before sitting down for a break. Come here. Let me see your dog tag. Without minding the dirt, Yoru sat at the edge of the grass and beckoned Ps. Wagging his tail happily, Ps came over and sat obediently. Unfortunately, the dog tag didn't have any information. Yoru rested for a bit, then slowly walked back to his bag. Elsewhere, Chika had jogged 2 laps around the scenic artificial lake and was lightly sweating when she stopped to look for Ps. Again? Out of my sight already? Blowing air from her mouth, she put her hands on her hips in frustration. She walked toward the direction Ps had run off, following his trail. The park was big, but someone was bound to have seen him. After asking around, Chika found her way near Yoru and called out loudly for Ps. Wait a second. Yoru saw Ps running around under the bench wagging his tail and gave a command. Woof. The clever little dog, who could easily be a guide dog, sat obediently. Yoru took out the breakfast he made this morning, placed it on his lap, and casually took a sip of water. Today's breakfast was a traditional Japanese seaweed rice ball. Yoru had made it himself, with a custom filling of pork floss and tuna. Taking one out, he bit into it and looked at the pitifully staring Ps. He broke off a small piece and tossed it high into the air. Ps, focused as ever, leapt up and caught it in one bite. Landing on the ground, he looked blissfully satisfied as he chewed, then licked his mouth. Yoru finished one and pulled out a second, again sharing a small piece with Ps. Ps. A voice called from afar. Yoru didn't recognize it since it came from a distance and he wasn't too familiar with Chika's voice. But Ps was very sensitive to his owner's voice. The moment he heard it, his first reaction was to hide. He ducked his head and crawled under the bench where Yoru was sitting. Huh? Was that for you? Yoru paused, glancing under the bench. Woof. Woof. Woof woof. Ps barked several times and shifted around. You should go. Your owner sounds really worried. Yoru lost the mood to continue feeding, so he just took another bite of his rice ball. The delicious filling filled his mouth. Tasty. Any food Yoru made was always above average. Almost at a professional chef's level. Under the bench, Ps wagged his tail anxiously. Hearing Chika's voice again, he became more restless. Yoru, still eating his rice ball, didn't notice the voice getting closer. The next second, Ps suddenly jumped out, barked at Yoru once, and ran toward Chika. He had figured it out. Chika was worried he might have eaten something bad. But he hadn't. So if he just brought her over, she wouldn't worry anymore, right? Ps ran quickly, barking along the way to guide her. There you are. From afar, Chika finally spotted Ps and sighed in relief. Woof. Woof. Ps reached her and turned his head, signaling her to follow. Where are you taking me? Before she could ask further, Ps turned and ran toward where Yoru was. Ps, wait for me. What now? Chika chased after him with effort, barely keeping up. Yoru had eaten half his rice ball. He'd made them small. About 3 bites each. Taking a sip of water, He was about to scroll through news on his phone when Ps rushed back. Alright, fine. Here's one for you. Yoru chuckled and tossed another rice ball to Ps. At that moment, Chika finally arrived, out of breath, taking slow steps. Who's that? He was feeding Ps. Thank goodness. Chika couldn't recognize Yoru at all and mumbled in confusion. Still scrolling on his phone, Yoru didn't notice that his benefactor was walking up. Not until she got close. Chika called out to Ps. Only a few meters away, Yoru finally turned his head. Fujiwara Chika? Yoru felt like he was waking from a dream. For a moment, he almost thought this athletic beauty in workout clothes was someone else. He had never gotten the chance to speak to her one-on-one, though he had wanted to for a long time. Sorry. This is my dog. Did it scare you? Chika glanced at Yoru's long hair and didn't pay much attention. Instead, she looked annoyed at Ps. Not at all. Your dog is really smart and well-behaved. Yoru gently shook his head and looked at Chika as he spoke. Huh. Chika nodded and smiled instinctively before snapping out of it. She took a good, careful look at Yoru again. No recognition at all. His hair was so long, his face was obscured. Was he even in the same grade? If he was a first year, he'd call her senpai. A third year would call her kuhai. Sorry, who are you again? I didn't recognize you. After racking her brain, Chika finally gave up and apologized with a smile. Fujiwara-san, it's me. I'm Kitakami. Yoru responded calmly, as if expecting this. Suddenly, Chika's smile froze, her face stiffened. What the heck? Was this really Kitakami-kun? You haven't seen me in a long time. I've been dieting, so of course I've changed. Yoru sighed wearily. Ah. You scared me. I thought there was another student named Kitakami in our school. Chika stared at him, then finally let out a huge sigh of relief, bending over with her hands on her knees as she laughed. Yoru saw this and moved his bag, shifting to make room beside him. P's fault. I was already exhausted from running and still had to chase after him. Chika glared at Ps in mock annoyance, then sat beside Yoru. You've really lost a lot of weight, Kitakami-kun. She added in surprise. Yeah. I've worked hard for it. The delicious aroma wafted out and drifted straight into Chika's nose. Anyone with common sense would know. You shouldn't run right after eating. Chika didn't go out on an empty stomach for her morning jog, but she hadn't eaten much either. Just a glass of milk and a slice of bread. After running and chasing after Ps, all that energy was used up. Her stomach had long gone empty. Her gaze subconsciously drifted toward Yoru's breakfast rice balls, and she swallowed. Would you like some? Yoru didn't mind sharing. Well. Chika hesitated, glancing at Yoru as her mouth watered. She reached out her small hand and gently picked one up. The rice ball was wrapped in a simple paper covering, so she didn't have to worry about her hands being dirty. I never properly thanked you before. Fujiwara-san, I'm really grateful to you. As Yoru spoke, he felt a tickling sensation at his foot. Looking down, he saw Ps staring at him with the eyes of a betrayed wife catching her cheating husband. Its fluffy tail brushed against his foot. Yoru threw another rice ball to it. Chika, still a bit reserved, stole a side glance at Yoru. As she thought about how much weight he had lost, she bit into the rice ball. The perfectly cooked glistening rice, formed into a ball, had a subtle sweetness and chewiness. The hearty filling added layers of flavor. The texture of the tuna was excellent, creating a unique taste in her mouth. It was definitely better than anything from a convenience store. This is so good. Even before swallowing, Chika's eyes sparkled like stars. She forgot her reservations and eagerly chewed, swallowed, and took another big bite. Yoru picked up another, one of the few left, and silently ate it while offering the box to Chika. Hee, then I won't hold back. It tasted so good she didn't plan to be polite anymore. She grabbed another. Pace could only stare helplessly as the treats that should have been his were taken by the very person he brought over. That's not how it was supposed to go. The box of rice balls was finished between two people and one dog. Chika still looked longingly at the box as Yoru packed it away. Fujiwara-san, is there anything you want? Yoru thought it over. Rather than worrying about how to thank her, it was better to ask directly. Something I want? Not really? Chika looked surprised. I've always wanted to give you something. Just saying thank you feels lacking. Yoru turned his head toward her. Through his hair, he could faintly see her entire expression. Ah, no need, really. No need at all. Chika waved her hands earnestly in refusal. She hadn't helped him for the sake of the reward. Besides, with her family background, what didn't she already have? I see. Yoru pursed his lips and unscrewed his thermos, deciding to let the subject drop. I heard from Kaguya that you were following behind me during the final exam? Chika leaned back and asked. Yoru gave a slight nod as he used the water from his thermos to rinse the sticky rice off his fingers. Yeah. I wanted to call out to you back then, but I hesitated. In the end, Shinomiya. Humphrey. His tone turned harsh. Even Ps could tell the mood had shifted. Beneath his long hair, his black eyes briefly showed displeasure. Chika pursed her lips and frowned. She was good friends with Kaguya. Was there a falling out between Yoru and Kaguya? Was it about that spring trip? She remembered the whole story and turned her head thoughtfully. Yoru packed up the thermos, wiped his hands dry on his pants, then parted his hair, revealing his gradually sharpened facial features. Fujiwara-san. He turned to look at her and spoke. At that moment, Chika also turned to face him. What? Ah. A strikingly handsome face suddenly filled her vision. The sight startled her more than someone sneaking into her room in the middle of the night. Her body recoiled on instinct, eyes full of shock. What's wrong? Did I scare you? Yoru seemed unaware. He didn't realize it was his sudden closeness. His face. That startled Chika. The truth was, he had become so handsome it startled her. The once gross, overweight shut-in had slimmed down to a nearly normal weight. And now, under that hair, was a surprisingly attractive face. Of course that would be a shock. And no. It's fine. Chika's lips trembled slightly, her eyes locked onto Yoru's face, examining it again and again. Sorry, I must have scared you. Yoru tilted his head, confused. His hair slid down, covering his face again. Chika blinked, finally regaining composure. Her heart was full of disbelief. He was that handsome. Yoru's weight loss felt like plastic surgery. A fat guy. In her mind, a manga panel appeared. On the left, the old gross fatty, cheeks bulging with meat. On the right, the current Yoru. If he showed up at school like this, people would be shocked. It's okay then. Yoru touched his still slightly chubby cheeks. He had looked in the mirror this morning and only saw that stubborn bit of fat. He didn't think he looked handsome at all. Just average, not ugly. What were you about to say just now? Chika patted her chest and exhaled. It's nothing now. Yoru gently waved his hand. He had wanted to tell her he'd found the real culprit, and soon he would be cleared. Otherwise, in Chika's eyes, he might always be that disgusting thief. Woof woof. Pei sparked a few times. In the next few minutes, they chatted for a bit more and eventually parted ways. In the end, Chika still refused any gift from Yoru. He couldn't do anything about it. Back at home, after some additional training, Yoru washed up, ate a green apple, and began reviewing his studies. At this point, he had pretty much relearned everything from the previous semester on his own and understood it well. He decided to cut down his study time to just an hour. In the afternoon, wearing a black baseball cap, Yoru went to work. Inside Angel Cafe, Uegahama-yi was organizing a pile of items and doing calculations. Yoru pushed the door open and, seeing Yi's back, felt his heart skip and a shy nervousness rise. Good afternoon, Yoru-kun. The wind chime at the door rang softly with a clear sound. Yi turned around with a gentle smile on her flawless face. Good afternoon, Manager Uegahama. Yoru raised his hand in greeting. Come here, I need your help with something. Yi waved him over. Yoru walked closer, but didn't stand too near. He stayed to the side. About your earlier suggestion. Putting some free light novels and manga in the corner. Can I ask you to go to Akihabara and pick some up? She paused, then added, I'll reimburse your travel expenses. No problem. Can I handle the arrangements? How much? Yoru again caught the faint scent of this mature lady's perfume. The bookshelf hasn't been delivered yet. You can pick the content yourself. The budget's around 150,000 yen. I'm counting on you, said Yi. Yoru nodded without hesitation, only then noticing that Yi was doing the accounting. He left the cafe. Yoru took out his phone and started calculating. A light novel or manga costs about 700 yen with tax. 10 volumes would be 7,000 yen. With a budget of 150,000 yen, that's quite a lot. The bookshelf in the cafe is for customers to pass time, not a bookstore display. Besides, Shuchin students aren't exactly poor, and the school library already offers a decent selection for free. So, there's no need to buy entire series. Just 1 or 2 volumes of the latest releases should be enough. And pick up some classics too. Used copies are fine. That way I can get more. Yoru muttered as he walked toward the station, phone in hand. The shopping street was extremely quiet. At a glance, there were only a dozen or so people passing by, none seriously browsing. Even the station had very few people. He scanned his transit card and headed to Akihabara in Chiyoda Ward. Fortunately, it wasn't far. Riding the junior line, he got there in under an hour. Yoru went straight to the smaller shops that specialized in used books. Used bookstores didn't only carry second-hand items, they also had new ones. Prices varied slightly depending on the store and the area. The shop where Nanami used to work part-time was still closed. Yoru walked into a second-hand bookstore and went straight to the owner, explaining what he needed. After some haggling and selection, the transaction was completed to the satisfaction of both sides. Yoru received a list of the books. After all, he couldn't carry an entire bookshelf's worth of books back to the cafe. He had to arrange for the store owner to deliver them by car. Half an hour later, Yoru walked out and bought a bottle of black coffee from a vending machine nearby. He took a sip and squinted. The sun was still intense today, with temperatures hovering around 30 degrees Celsius. Even during this time of day, Akihabara still had a steady flow of people. He took off his cap and ruffled his hair to cool off, casually strolling with his coffee in hand. It wasn't like he was slacking off. Whether he was here or sitting idly at the cafe didn't make a difference. If the cafe had been busy, he would have rushed back immediately. Shimimas. A cute maid in a black and white outfit was handing out flyers on the street. Maid cafes were never cheap. A simple omelet costs 3 times what it would in a regular diner, and a single cup of coffee can be thousands of yen. Going alone would easily cost at least 6,000 or 7,000 yen. And if you're unlucky, you might get scammed by one of the more exploitative places targeting tourists. Hey. Sorry, I'm not interested. Yoru deftly dodged and sped up his pace. Ah. The maid was quite cute. Failing to draw in a customer, she pouted at Yoru as he walked away. Well, makes sense. Guys that tall and handsome probably don't need girlfriends. Not our target clientele. Serving good-looking guys is a lot more enjoyable than pretending for those gross fat nerds. Her displeasure flickered briefly before she turned her sharp gaze back to scanning for tourists or gullible otaku. So weird. Is it my hair being too long, or is my outfit off somehow? Why do people keep staring? Yoru walked to the front of the famous radio Keikon near Akihabara station and tossed trash into one of the rare public bins. The yellow sign was very eye-catching. He didn't need to go inside. Yoru lingered for a moment, then left Akihabara. Along the way, the streets were plastered with ads. Genshin Impact took up a prominent section, and cosplayers occasionally passed by. Before leaving, Yoru spotted 2 familiar figures in cosplay doing a photo shoot near Akihabara Station, Kitagawa Marin, whom he'd bumped into a while back, and another long-legged girl from school with a bit of a delinquent vibe. He remembered Kitagawa Marin because she had stepped on his foot. The other girl. Kawa something? Probably a classmate in the same year. After watching for a bit, Yoru left Akihabara and returned to the cafe. It wasn't until later in the afternoon, just before closing time. A pickup truck pulled up, delivering 2 big boxes of light novels, magazines, and manga. Yi paid the bill. Spending 150,000 yen in one go was quite a major purchase. After checking everything, Yoru helped the store owner push the 2 full boxes inside. His next few days of work would probably be waiting for the bookshelf to arrive, then arranging the light novels and manga on it. Work was done. Back home, Yoru lay on the couch and dug out the high-end art book from earlier. He opened his phone, comparing art styles as he searched for the artist. If he found out that the creator of this art book was Ariri. After a while, Yoru irritably put the art book away and took out a carefully preserved travel voucher. This expires at the end of the month. Who should I go with? His first choice was Gabriel, but she hadn't returned. Next on the list was Megumi, who had occasionally been messaging him lately. But Yoru still hadn't invited her. A man and a woman, a pair, going out of town for a seaside trip. No matter how you spin it, it's basically a date. Yoru didn't want Megumi to get the wrong idea. Time passed quietly, in the blink of an eye. Mid-August arrived, with less than half a month left before the new term. After his morning workout, Yoru used a can of cat food to coax San-san into the carrier. Don't move around. Be good. I'll give you the rest of the can when we're back. He reminded San-san inside the transparent carrier, then carried it on his way to the pet clinic. They needed to get her vaccinated, dewormed, and maybe even washed. San-san was generally well behaved, except she hated water. Yoru always had to hold her down to get her clean. Meow meow. San-san mewed softly from inside the carrier. Yoru was already on the borderline of being slightly overweight. His body was still somewhat out of proportion, but his body fat percentage was steadily decreasing. To transform in such a short time. Any normal person would say it's impossible. With San-san in tow, he headed to the clinic. I wonder if Yukino Shita-san's working today? Yoru arrived at the familiar storefront and stepped inside. Sitting at the front desk, Yukino Shita was fiddling with a golden lucky cat figurine. Yukino Shita-san. Yoru spoke up first. After slimming down, even his voice had changed dramatically. Deeper, smoother, almost sultry. "Who are you?" Yukino frowned, looking confusedly at the boy whose hair covered half his face. "It's me, Yoru. I brought Sansa for her booster shot and deworming. Maybe a bath too." Yoru sighed. He had expected this reaction. Before she could respond, he opened the carrier and let Sansan out. Meow. Sansan stayed close to Yoru's leg, wary in this unfamiliar place, her nose picking up scents from other animals. You lost weight so fast." Yukino's shocked reaction was exactly what he expected. Gained it fast, lost it fast. Yoru let out a small sigh. Thankfully, the speed of his weight loss hadn't been freakishly abnormal. "I wouldn't have recognized you at all." Yukino stared at him for a long while, as if trying to commit his new appearance to memory. But soon, she accepted the truth and shifted her attention to Sansan. She stepped out, and the doctor followed from the back. Yoru went to pay a small fee. The pet industry in Japan had started relatively early and developed well. Without monopolization, the prices weren't outrageous. Inside the treatment room, Yukino occasionally glanced at Yoru while putting an Elizabethan collar on Sansan to prevent her from struggling or accidentally scratching someone. Yoru kept talking about cat food, trying to tempt Sansan and distract her. Yukino had professional equipment and was very experienced in handling it. It didn't take long before the bath was done. "She's really cute. So round. It's rare to see one like her," Yukino said as she used a towel to dry Sansan's fur, unable to resist petting her. Yoru scratched his own hair. He decided to get it cut before school started. It was getting a bit too long and starting to affect his vision. The sound of the hairdryer came on. As a proper cat lover, Yukino's work attitude was meticulous to every detail. "Do you always work here during long breaks?" Yoru asked casually. "Yes. I don't have anything else to do. And I like cats." Yukino nodded calmly. "Don't you go out for fun?" Yoru muttered. He couldn't recall hearing about Yukino having any friends. Except for Uegahama Yue, maybe. But friendship is more about quality than quantity. His voice wasn't loud, but Yukino still heard it. She didn't respond. Soon, the sound of the hairdryer stopped. Yukino picked up the slightly restless Sansan and turned toward Yoru. "Would you mind?" Halfway through, she seemed to remember something unpleasant and smirked darkly. "Would the peeping Tom classmate kindly leave for a bit? Please give me some private space." "Thank you." With that, Yukino lowered her head, smiling slightly as she looked at Sansan. "Yukino Shita-san, are you really still going on about that?" Yoru let out a hopeless breath. "You're going to rub yourself all over Sansan again, aren't you?" "No. Please leave." Yukino's gaze was sharp like an arrow, shooting straight at Yoru. "All right." Yoru had no choice but to obediently step out. The moment he left, Yukino transformed. Her expression softened into something sweet and gentle. Smiling softly, she began doing all kinds of indescribable things to Sansan. A little while later, she came out holding Sansan to administer the vaccine and deworming treatment. When they were done, she continued carrying Sansan all the way to the store entrance. "If you love cats that much, why don't you get one yourself?" Yoru asked curiously as he opened the cat carrier. Yukino just shook her head gently and didn't answer. Phew. Yoru took off his cap, swept his hair back, and exhaled forcefully. Yukino's wandering eyes suddenly narrowed, and her icy blue pupils shrank. Her lips parted slightly. Just then, Sansan climbed into the carrier. Yoru bent down and zipped it closed. His hair fell back down and covered his face again. "All right, you'll get the rest of the cat food at home." Yoru lifted the carrier in front of his face and spoke to Sansan inside. Then he held it in one hand, glanced at Yukino, and naturally assumed she was reluctant to part with Sansan. He waved and walked off. Only after he had gone some distance did Yukino snap out of her daze, her brows furrowing deeply. Did I see that right?" Doubtfully, the so-called ice queen of the school muttered softly. In that brief moment, Yukino's instincts as a girl had screamed to her. Yoru was handsome. It wasn't like she hadn't seen good-looking guys before. In fact, she had seen plenty. But none had made her feel like this. It was just a pure reaction to something beautiful. Yoru looked seriously good. She wouldn't say it was love. More like the joy of encountering something pleasant. But more than that, Yukino felt doubt, along with a trace of shyness and curiosity. Maybe she was seeing things. But Yoru had really slimmed down. No. Didn't get a good look. Standing under the sun, Yukino gently shook her head, questioning herself and somewhat trying to escape the thought. Realizing she got distracted just because Yoru looked too handsome. That was a bit embarrassing. The ice queen of the school, always cold and distant, blushing because Yoru got good looking? That couldn't be real, right? Could someone like her really act like that? If Yoru found out, he'd never believe it. Aku. On the road, Yoru sneezed and rubbed his nose. Man, summer break's almost over. School starts soon. Can I get my body fat down a bit more in the remaining time? I wonder how Eri will react when she sees me looking like this at school. Recently, spending time alone with Yi had left Yoru distracted and made him recall how he treated Eri before. Hey. Thinking of Eri, Yoru couldn't help missing that adorable little tsundere who always rolled her eyes and looked down on him. Her over-the-top pride, always acting like a queen. It made people itch to tease her. Kasumijoka Utaha and Shinomiya Kaguya were both prideful in their own ways too. Maybe because they were constantly chased by simps, they'd gotten used to looking down on guys. Over time, their perception shifted. Chapter 82, Megumi, want to go on a trip together sometime soon? I've slimmed down quite a bit again lately. It was mid-August, less than 2 weeks before school resumed. Yoru's travel voucher was about to expire. If he didn't use it, it'd go to waste. After all, it was a luxurious 3-day, 2-night trip for two. You'd be an idiot to let that kind of deal go to waste. After sending the message, Yoru got out of bed and headed to the shower. Where are we going? Megumi replied quickly. She must have been up early. I won a 3-day, 2-night luxury travel package in Kanagawa. It's with a small tour group. Want to come? Photo of the travel voucher. Yoru attached a picture of the voucher. Megumi didn't reply immediately. Maybe she was thinking it over or asking her parents. After washing up, Yoru went to the kitchen to make breakfast. As usual, he filled Sansan's bowl with kibble and water, grabbed his gym bag, and headed out. The park was familiar. The scenery hadn't changed. It was around the same time as always. 2,000 meters. He was feeling good today. Yoru almost managed to grit his teeth and run the whole distance in one go. Back in late March, right before the spring trip, he had been a 300-pound fatty. Just walking a bit faster had left him gasping, breathless. Now, he could push through a 2,000-meter run. After a short rest, Yoru was slightly surprised he didn't run into Fujiwara Chika Orps. Taking a sip of water, Yoru opened his breakfast box. A large slice of salmon, lightly seared with black pepper, and a full box of vegetable salad. Just then, Ps came trotting from afar, pulling Chika along. The moment she spotted Yoru, she perked up in excitement. Ps. I'm your owner, not Kitaka. I mean, not him, okay? You might as well go live with him. Panting, Chika loosened Ps's leash and grumbled at the dog. Woof woof. Ps seemed to understand and turned back with a pitiful whimper. You're human, I'm a dog. Why should I go on morning runs or skip breakfast? You take me out for a walk in the morning, but don't feed me properly. Isn't that just plain bullying? Unfortunately, Chika couldn't understand dog language. As Yoru lifted a piece of salmon with his chopsticks, his head tilted back and hair parted, revealing his nearly flawless features. Then came Spark. His eating was interrupted, and he looked over. Woof woof. Woof. Ps broke free from Chika's leash and dashed over to Yoru, flopping around wildly at his feet. Ps, not again. Chika caught up a few seconds later, panting, and smiled apologetically at Yoru. I'm used to it by now. We run into each other every few days. Yoru put down his chopsticks and bowl, lifted his long hair, and tied it behind his ears to keep it out of his face. Did he get even more handsome? Chika's breath stalled for a second. She found herself stealing another glance at Yoru and sat beside him. Yoru was still slightly chubby, and the fat on his face changed day by day. Look at him again a week later, and you'd notice the difference. He was naturally getting more handsome. Low body fat, around 10%, boosts facial attractiveness by at least 20%. And Yoru was still cutting fat and slimming down. Morning. School's starting soon. Yoru took another bite of salmon and tossed a piece to Ps. There's still half a month. You've slimmed down so much. People at school are going to be shocked. Not to mention. Chika smiled softly as she admired Yoru's stunning profile. Then suddenly stopped mid-sentence. Not to mention what? Yoru turned to her and met her gaze. Oh, comma. And nothing. It's nothing. Ahaha. Chika's heartbeat stumbled. She forced a laugh, trying to cover up. No way could she say something like "you're so ridiculously handsome" out loud. She wasn't that bold. Oh? Want to try some? Yoru raised the box of salmon toward her. The salmon had been lightly seared in olive oil with a touch of black pepper. Its aroma drifted temptingly through the air. This. Chika looked down, unsure whether to accept or decline. Ps was practically drooling. Thinking she didn't want to dirty her hands, Yoru reversed his chopsticks and picked up a piece, offering it to her. All she had to do was open her mouth. The delicious-smelling salmon approached, and Chika tilted her head slightly and opened her mouth, ready to be fed. Yoru hesitated for a second, then gently placed the salmon into her soft pink lips. "It's so good." She took a bite and nodded repeatedly with satisfaction as she swallowed the salmon. The delicious flavor still lingered in her mouth. And that's when it hit her. Wait, this is... Her hand clenched the edge of the bench. She turned her head away, blushing hard at Yoru's profile. That was way too intimate. Ah. Though silent on the surface, her mind was screaming. Chika's adorable face turned faintly pink. Woof. Scott another piece of salmon and jumped with excitement, giving Chika another little shock. A few minutes later. Still flustered, Chika found an excuse to leave with "Ps. See you." Yoru's hair had already fallen back down. Bye. Hee hee. Chika managed a strained smile. Since Yoru's face was covered, she felt more at ease. After saying goodbye, she briskly tugged the reluctant Ps away. Only when Yoru had turned into a tiny dot in the distance did she finally exhale and glance back. He's way too good looking. And kind of cute, too. That scared me. The pink-haired girl patted her chest, her face full of disbelief. Yoru still hadn't really considered just how much more handsome he'd become, nor did he notice anything strange about Chika. After all, once his hair came down, his looks were sealed again. After finishing the salmon, Yoru wolfed down the salad seasoned with black pepper and salt, then headed home. He didn't weigh himself after the workout. The closer he got to his goal, the harder it was to drop pounds. In short bursts of time, his weight wouldn't change much. While showering, he received confirmation from Megami. She agreed to the trip, and the departure date was set. After putting away his phone, Yoru looked at himself in the mirror and twisted his hips a bit. A few days later, it was August 21st. 10 days left before the second semester at Shuchin Academy began. That afternoon, Yoru, as usual, wore his baseball cap and headed to Angel's Cafe. Today was the last day of his job there. The cafe was already running smoothly. Only a few decorative touches and minor details were left. Ding ding ding. The clear sound of a bell echoed at the door. Good afternoon, Yoru-kun. Yuagahama, you seem to have been waiting for him. She stood by the bookshelf and looked back with a gentle smile. Goo. Good afternoon, Manager Yuagahama. Yoru gave a small nod. You remembered what I said, right? You didn't eat lunch? Yi stepped forward a few steps. I didn't. I skipped lunch today. Yoru replied. Good. Come try my cooking. This was Yoru's last day working there, and Yi wanted to have a proper meal with him. So she'd told him earlier not to eat lunch today. Yuagahama-san's not coming? Yoru asked as he stepped inside. It's usually just the two of us, right? Yi walked toward the bar, then stopped and looked back. Yoru flinched and took a step back. Hee hee. What are you afraid of, Yoru-kun? I'm not going to eat you. Or is it awkward and uncomfortable spending time with your classmates' mom? She chuckled softly. I guess you could say that. Yoru nodded like a bobblehead. Then just think of me as your boss. Yi said, then circled behind the bar and pulled out a large tray from the warming cabinet. The tray held several small dishes. Beautifully presented and full of flavor. Come on, let's eat. Thank you for all your hard work. Yi said plainly. She simply wanted to thank Yoru with a meal. Besides, it was her cafe. Basically her home. Since Yoru was her daughter's classmate and clubmate, as the host and an elder, she wanted to treat him properly. All right. Yoru nodded politely, albeit a bit stiffly. Yi placed the food at a 4-person booth and waved him over. Yoru had no choice but to sit opposite her. Facing each other, he sniffed lightly. The delicious aroma wafted into his nose. I don't know if you'll like it, but Yue does. I made it according to her taste. She handed out bowls, chopsticks, and spoons. The rice was already served. Thank you, manager. Yoru accepted them with both hands. Then he removed his cap. His long hair fell down. It would get in the way while eating. Oh, wait a moment, Yoru-kun. Yi suddenly remembered something and stood up, walking toward the break room. Yoru looked puzzled. A few seconds later, she returned with a black hair tie. Yoru-kun, are you planning to grow your hair long? She handed him the hair tie and sat back down. Not exactly. I'm thinking of getting it cut before school starts. Yoru shook his head and tried to tie up his hair messily with a band. Ever since the day she accidentally sat down on Yoru's stomach, Yi had realized the boy hiding under long hair and a slightly chubby frame was actually incredibly handsome. And now, after only a short time, he looked even better. Previously, she'd thought his looks were on par with the male leads in the romance or school dramas she liked to watch. Now, though, he completely surpassed them. He's really so handsome. I wonder if Yui would like him? Her gaze lingered on Yoru's face as she silently thought of her daughter. As a woman who'd already had a child, she was experienced enough not to act like a flustered young girl even while shocked or impressed. This is good. Yoru tied his hair up and tasted a bite of food. Then let's eat. Yi let out a small breath and smiled warmly as she picked up her chopsticks. To be honest, the food tasted great. It was just a little on the bland side. Probably because Yi was mindful that Yoru was dieting. After lunch, Yoru wiped his mouth with a napkin. Koharu sat across from him, not cleaning up the dishes yet, tilting her head slightly with her chin propped up. Her smooth, fair arm lay across the table. Her full chest pressed slightly against her arm, creating a noticeable curve. Yoru didn't dare look at her directly. I also baked a cake and made some coffee. Yoru-kun, why don't you try them too? Seeing Yoru finish with the napkin, Yi gave him no chance to speak before heading to the bar and bringing over a tray. Ah. Yuagahama-san's mom really takes good care of people. Yoru thought to himself as he looked toward the bar. He didn't know that, after divorcing her status-conscious husband, Yi had to raise Yu alone, making sure to care for every aspect of her life. It's a sponge chiffon cake. If the coffee's too bitter, you can add sugar. Yi carefully set down Yoru's portion in front of him. A small, fruit-topped, cream-free cake. A cup of black coffee. A bowl of chopped fruit. Thank you. Yoru reached out politely. When he grabbed the coffee, his hand accidentally brushed against Yi's warm and gentle one. The moment their hands touched, they pulled away. Yoru felt a tingle shoot through him, both uncomfortable and a little excited. Yi didn't seem to mind at all. Smiling, she took a sip of her coffee. They slowly enjoyed the dessert together. From a mother's perspective, Yi casually asked Yoru a few questions about school and life. The coffee was refilled twice as they chatted. Finally, she set her cup down. Yoru-kun is surprisingly pure and handsome. So charming. If he ever starred in an idol or romance drama. She was in a great mood, the smile on her lips never fading. Oh right, Yoru-kun, could I ask one last favor? Something had just come to mind. Sure? Yoru stood up. Don't move, it'll just take a second. Please wait. When it came to business, Yi was decisive and efficient. Yoru sat back down on the sofa and waited a moment. Yi came back holding an apron with the cafe's logo and name on it. As expected. It was a uniform. Please wear this and let me take a few promo photos? She had a small idea. Yoru was young, attractive, and charming. He'd look great on flyers or social media ads for the cafe. Wouldn't young girls come flocking just to see a good-looking guy? Sure, no problem. Yoru reached for the apron. No rush. I want to help fix your hair first. Yi smiled and raised the apron higher. Oh, I'll do it myself. Yoru reached up to his hair. Do you know how? Yi gave him a playful look and pursed her tempting lips. I'll help. She said firmly, in a tone that allowed no refusal. Yoru froze, unsure of what to do. Come on, Yoru-kun. Auntie will make you look very handsome. Yi walked over with a bright smile and stood behind him. Then. Okay. Yoru nodded stiffly, sitting upright, more proper than proper. He wasn't like this at all back when he ruthlessly put that proud rich girl Ariri in her place. Relax, don't be scared, and stay still. Her gentle scent slipped into his nose and slowly crept into his brain. Those delicate, pale hands reached into his hair. His black hair spread like a waterfall. Yi's eyes were filled with tenderness and a hint of playfulness. Yoru's reaction was so shy it was almost cute. From behind, she could tell how tense he was. His shoulders were trembling slightly. Back then, Yoru-kun thought I was Yu's sister. Her fingers carefully combed his hair down, clawing softly through it. Thinking of it made her chuckle quietly, her expression utterly beautiful. Tangled strands were gently brushed apart. Her touch was so gentle that Yoru slowly began to relax, though he still didn't dare turn around. He knew that if he leaned his head back just a little, he'd fall straight into a sea of softness. Yu's figure was already impressive among girls her age. But behind him stood Yu's mature mother. There was no comparison. Your hair's in great condition. Yi quickly focused again. Her fingers slid to his hairline, brushing it back. The strands around his ears were revealed, and his now reddened ears betrayed his embarrassment. Huh? Yi's eyes lit up like she'd discovered a new continent. Her gaze fixed intensely on his ears. Yoru felt like his ears were on fire. No way. He's actually blushing? Yi's mouth opened slightly in surprise. Could it be? Was Yoru-kun developing feelings for her? But she was so much older. Old enough to be his mother. She was literally the mother of his classmate. Yi thought about it, but she wasn't angry. On the contrary, she felt a strange mix of joy and shyness. She didn't take it too seriously. It was just a passing thought. Her hands kept moving. She gathered Yoru's hair at the back, layering it and pinning up the extra strands with black clips. Then she twisted the rest into a bun at the base of his skull. Is it done? Yoru felt his scalp being tugged and could tell his hair was tied up. The back's done. Now the front. Yi moved to Yoru's side and gently placed a hand on his shoulder. Guiding him, she turned his body to face her. Yi was a bit taller than Yoru. Yoru was seated on the booth. That meant his line of sight was exactly level with Yi's chest. And it was close. Panicking, Yoru quickly shut his eyes, his adrenaline spiking. Yi, acting completely calm, looked down at him with a soft smile. She gently reached toward his bangs and separated a few strands of hair on either side. The dragon beard bangs. One long, one short. Were absolutely perfect. At that moment, Yi felt her heart stir with spring-like emotion. Yoru had always been handsome, but with just a little styling, his charm now felt completely unleashed. She stared at him, eyes wide, before biting her lip slightly, feeling a bit ashamed of herself. Yoru-kun is young enough to call me mom. She muttered in mock reproach, stepping back and letting go. Is it done? Yoru opened his eyes and rolled his sore neck, using a brief moment to steady himself. The lingering scent of her perfume was making him dizzy with confusion. He didn't even dare look at Yi directly. All done. Yi stepped back again, resting her chin in her hand as she studied Yoru's face thoughtfully. Yoru turned and picked up the apron, slipping it on. No matter how you look at him, he is unbelievably handsome. Yi hummed softly as she stepped forward, reaching out with both hands. Yoru, completely unprepared, suddenly had Yi's warm hands cradle his head. Huh? The next second, he heard her soft voice by his ear. Don't move. I'm just adjusting the back a bit. As she spoke, her hands gently pushed Yoru's head downward. With his head leaning forward, their distance narrowed. Her full chest was right in front of his eyes. Close enough for his breath to graze it. Even though this had happened once before, Yoru was still incredibly pure at heart. His body froze, not daring to breathe, eyes wide open. Then, Yi pushed down a little more, completely unaware of anything inappropriate. It was almost touching his face. Yoru was so tense that he shut his eyes tightly. Just a centimeter. No, a few millimeters more and they would have touched. Yi finished adjusting, stepped back, and looked at her handiwork with satisfaction. Manager Uegahama must really see me as a kid. Phew. Yoru blinked rapidly, staring at the floor and taking deep breaths. He wasn't wrong. Though he wasn't completely right either. The main reason for the treatment he received was because he was too handsome. Even a mature woman who had already given birth to a daughter almost couldn't resist his charm. The rest had to do with his personality, background, and reactions. But none of that really mattered. When he used to be a greasy, overweight slob, women found him disgusting and avoided him. Now that he transformed, women found him irresistible. A clear double standard. Perfect? Yi made a playful peace sign and took out her phone. What should I do? Yoru cooperatively stood up. Like this. And like that. Relax your expression a little. Look more melancholic. Yi gave him directions while continuously tapping the shutter button. Click. 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 Dozens of photos were taken, filling her gallery. Perfect? Yi clenched her fist in satisfaction and gave Yoru a look of encouragement. Phew, that was exhausting. Yoru flopped into his seat, feeling more drained than after running 2,000 meters. He. Yi glanced at him and started flipping through her recent trophies. Yoru holding a coffee tray, bowing slightly, bangs fluttering, a professional smile on his face. Yoru at an angle, pretending to tidy a messy table. Yoru with one hand on the back of the sofa, legs slightly apart, eyes relaxed, smiling naturally. He gave off a strange aura. At first glance, bright and sunny, but on closer inspection, there was a cold aloofness, making him seem both hard to approach and warmly gentle at the same time. Yi stopped at this photo and stared at it for 2 seconds. It felt like time slowed around her. She gasped softly. In that photo, Yoru's charm surged forth, easily piercing through the mature lady's supposedly solid defenses. Her face flushed red in an instant. Her plump, fair thighs instinctively pressed tightly together, even trembling a little. Her toes curled. Her delicate feet tensed and lifted slightly off the floor. She felt itchy all over. It was like she'd lost all composure. How embarrassing. Just moments ago, she was feeling superior for not being one of those shallow girls who freeze at the sight of a handsome guy. Meanwhile, Yoru poured himself another cup of coffee and took big gulps, completely unaware of Yi's abnormal state. That afternoon, after his shift ended, Yoru received his wages and a discount card for 20% off, then left Angel Cafe. He finally left. Yi finally understood that odd feeling Yoru must have had being around her. She watched him walk away slowly. There's a bit more than expected. On the way to the station, Yaru opened the envelope containing his pay. Kiryomen's salary. He reached the end of the shopping street, caught a ride, and headed home. Not to his apartment, but his family home. About 30 minutes later, he arrived just in time for dinner. In August, Tokyo didn't get dark until 7 p.m. His sudden return startled both his parents. "Did you tell him about the medical check I wanted you to trick him into?" While Yoru was in the restroom, his mom asked quietly. "I told him. He just hasn't gone yet." His dad gave a troubled smile. Still, seeing their son slim down was a great thing. Long hair, and once lifted, he was a total heartthrob. "Push him again," his mom whispered. Soon, Yaru came into the kitchen, tossed his baseball cap aside, tied up his hair casually with the black hair tie Yi had given him, and started eating. Neither parent was shocked. Only joyful. His dad, when young, had looked somewhat like this. There was some resemblance. They knew their son wouldn't look the same to outsiders. At this point, Yoru still wasn't slim enough, he was still slightly chubby, with a higher than average body fat percentage. But his looks already matched. Or even surpassed his dad's prime. And this was with his hair tied up messily, wearing loose, sloppy clothes. Kitakami Megumi, his mom, stared boldly at her son's features. He had perfectly inherited both her and her husband's best traits, while discarding the flaws. Pa. Megumi picked up a bite of food and glanced subtly at her husband. She used to be just like Kazumijouka Utaha. Aloof and indifferent toward men. But the first time she met Yoru's father, her heart had raced. And she was swept away. So maybe a tendency to gain weight could be inherited? There was exactly 1 week left before the start of school. That morning, Yaru woke up early. He took a deep breath and stepped onto the scale. The numbers flickered rapidly before settling on 153. For his height, 130 was the baseline for standard weight. "I still have a week. I should be able to drop a few more pounds. That'll do." He exhaled and stepped off the scale, hands on his hips, a bit dissatisfied. He'd originally wanted to reach his goal weight by himself. He'd give himself another 1 or 2 months to train up a good body with defined muscles. By then, he'd be a brand new person next year. At this stage, it would take at least a month, maybe longer, to get rid of the remaining stubborn fat. The further he progressed, the harder it got. Yoru put away the scale and headed to the shower. He wasn't going for a morning run today. After washing up and having breakfast, it'd be time to leave. 2 days earlier in the afternoon, Megumi Kato had came to find Yoru so they could go to the travel agency together and redeem their tickets. The group tour was scheduled for today, meeting up with the guide at Shinjuku's Central Station. He had temporarily left Sanzo with his mother. "By the way, hasn't Gabriel come back yet?" Yoru was starting to miss Gabriel a little. After breakfast, he picked up the backpack he had prepared and left for Shinjuku. An hour later, Yoru arrived at the plaza in front of the station, looking around for the tour guide and Megumi. He pulled his cap low to hide his hair, leaving only his eyes exposed. Gathering time was 9:30, with departure at exactly 10:00. It was now 8:50. The guide should be arriving early. A few minutes later, the guide sent a location message in the group chat. Yoru took his time walking over. He saw a middle-aged male guide standing beside a few tourists. Both locals and foreigners. He stepped forward, confirmed his details, and silently waited to the side. A few more minutes passed. Megumi showed up, dressed lightly, wearing sneakers and carrying a small backpack. "Yoru-kun, morning." Yoru greeted her. "Ah, morning." Megumi smiled lightly and pulled out a sandwich from her bag, waving it a little. "Want one?" "I bought extra. I already ate." Yoru got along easily with Megumi, so he declined directly. Worried it might hurt the friendship? "Not at all." "Then I'll have it." Megumi stood next to him, nibbling on the sandwich while occasionally sneaking glances at Yoru. The first time she saw him recently, she was so shocked she couldn't sleep that night. Back then, Yoru was chubby, with features almost buried in fat. Now, after slimming down, it was a total transformation. Handsome. And charming. To explain. Some people are simply good-looking. Others might have average features but such an outstanding aura or shine to them that they become charming. Having charm is just as powerful as being handsome. Yoru had both. Just one glance and you couldn't stop looking at his face. You never got tired of it. In fact, the more you looked, the more you liked it. He was even kind of adorable. When a girl says you're handsome, you might actually be handsome. When she says you're cute, you probably aren't actually cute. It just means she likes you. School's starting soon. Megumi hadn't taken her eyes off her best friend's face once. She was happy for Yoru, but also a bit torn and a little envious. Yoru-kun's so good looking now, he'll definitely be super popular at school. If he Yoru was her only real close friend. Now that he was handsome, she was sure tons of girls would flock around him. And she'd get left out. Sigh. At 10:00 sharp, the tour group, led by the guide, was fully assembled. Including the guide himself, there were 9 people. They entered the station together. The agency had booked train tickets to Kanagawa Prefecture. Kanagawa was a popular tourist destination, directly bordering Tokyo. Very close. If you lived on the border, you could literally have 1 foot in Tokyo and 1 foot in Kanagawa. First stop was Yokohama. Once they arrived, a shuttle from the agency picked them up and took them to their hotel. A 4-star stay for 1 night. After enjoying the complimentary lunch buffet and resting a bit, the group left at 2:00 p.m. with the guide on the shuttle for sightseeing. Anyone not interested could stay back at the hotel. Yokohama's Chinatown was the largest in all of Japan and even Asia. As they arrived, Yoru walked alongside Megumi, following behind the guide. A wave of familiarity and warmth hit him instantly. They strolled for over an hour. Yoru pulled Megumi over to take a few pictures together and try some street food. Then they got on the shuttle again for the next destination. Yokohama Minato Marai 21. Nogiyamazu. That night, the shuttle drove across Yokohama Bay Bridge to end the day. The next morning, after breakfast, they left for Yokosuka City at 9:00. They visited a now-famous art museum. Lunch was free time. In the afternoon, they toured the Yokosuka Naval Port to see American warships. The rest of the day was for personal plans. Tomorrow was the last day. Evening, back at the hotel room. Megumi wore a loose short-sleeved shirt. The small table in the room was filled with American-style food. Because there was a U.S. military base here, lots of American families lived in the area. Many Americans opened restaurants, and Megumi had gone out to buy from one of them. Inside the bathroom, the sound of Yoru showering suddenly stopped. He rustled into a wide, white bathrobe and started drying his hair with a hairdryer, studying his reflection. Still not there. A few spots still looked chubby. I'll have to cut body fat further. Do I look good like this? He looked at his face in the mirror. He couldn't say for sure, but he thought it looked decent. Clean and fair-skinned. At least not ugly. He'd heard that if you stare at yourself in the mirror long enough, your eyes and brain start to trick you, automatically beautifying your image in your own mind. So Yoru never fully trusted what he saw. Maybe he really didn't know how lucky he was. But he didn't need to. As long as others saw the face, that was enough. After drying his hair, Yoru remembered he needed to eat. He tied his hair up, opened the door, and stepped out. So handsome. Megumi had been watching him all day and hadn't built any resistance at all. Anymore, and she might actually fall for Yoru. The third day. The shuttle left early. Destination, Kamakura, Kanagawa's most famous sightseeing spot. Here they'd find Shichirigahama Beach. One of the filming sites for Slam Dunk. The Great Buddha of Kamakura, Inoshima. Yoru sat next to Megumi and gave her the window seat. Up ahead is Shichirigahama. It's where Slam Dunk was filmed. Everyone, look to the left. Driver, could you slow down a bit? No need to rush. The shuttle will stop nearby. The guide reassured everyone. The shuttle slowly climbed the slope. Late August, with perfect clear skies. It was the perfect day to view the sea. The deep blue water looked almost poetic. Yoru pressed his lips together. Not bad. Most people who came to Kanagawa were here for this exact spot. Megumi, her expression as calm as always, slightly parted her lips. About 10 minutes later, the minibus stopped nearby. Yoru and Megumi took a detour, came down from a slope, and noticed a school just a stone's throw away. At the bottom of the gentle slope, dozens of tourists crowded under the scorching sun, holding up their phones and snapping photos like crazy. They took a break at noon. In the afternoon, they visited the Great Buddha of Kamakura and strolled around Inoshima. The tour group had wrapped up and was getting ready to return. Megumi apparently hadn't had enough and asked Yoru if they could stay another day to visit the beach. Yoru wasn't in any hurry, so they picked a well-known beach nearby and booked 2 separate rooms. Megumi went to rest. Too hot under the sun. They'd head out to the beach around sunset. Even during the trip, Yoru hadn't slacked off from training. Since he couldn't run, he did push-ups and hill sprints to stay disciplined. Around 5 o'clock. The sun had started to ease. Megumi changed into a modest swimsuit, applied sunscreen, and appeared before Yoru. I didn't bring a swimsuit. Yoru finally realized. He'd never been a fan of swimming anyway. It wouldn't feel complete coming to the beach without going in at least once. Megumi smiled faintly. They arrived together at the beach. Golden fine sand, crystal clear waters, small waves. Not a speck of trash in sight. Lifeguards stood atop lookout towers. Only problem was, Everyone else was smart enough to avoid the midday sun too. So now, it was quite crowded. Megumi started stretching, warming up before going into the water. Yoru didn't feel like swimming. He sat on the beach with his knees pulled up, silently watching. Now and then, he'd respond to Megumi from the water, chatting casually. There was plenty to enjoy on the beach too. About 10 minutes later, Megumi finished swimming and came ashore, dripping wet. Yoru stepped forward and handed her a towel. "Sorry to make you just watch me swim." Megumi gently wiped the seawater off her pale skin, offering a faint smile of apology. The smile quickly faded, her calm expression returning. "Want to go get something to drink?" Yoru waved his hand casually. "Doesn't matter." Megumi nodded slightly, and the two walked toward a beachside restaurant. "Why do I feel like someone's been staring at me?" Standing outside the restaurant, Yoru looked back suspiciously and touched his face. Megumi got a soda. Yoru opted for an ice-cold electrolyte drink. They stepped outside and found a spot to sit. "What a coincidence. Kitakami-kun, is that you?" Vignette, wearing a normal-style swimsuit, walked up and greeted him. She was a demon and had recognized Yoru by his aura. "Vignette?" Yoru was the surprised one. He hadn't seen her in ages and was shocked she could still recognize him. "It's me. You've lost so much weight." Vignette looked him up and down. Honestly, Yoru-kun looked really good after slimming down. So this was what humans meant when they talked about charm? In the demon realm, strength was beauty. Looks came second. "Thanks." Yoru could already guess that in a few days, the entire school would be buzzing about how he'd slimmed down. That would be perfect. Riding the wave of popularity would help clarify that the whole thing about him stealing Kasumijoka Utaha's panties and stockings had been a misunderstanding. It's easy to spread rumors, but clearing your name is the real challenge. "And this is?" Vignette sat beside Yoru and glanced toward Megumi. "Nice to meet you. I'm Megumi Kato, a second year." Megumi seemed to notice that Vignette wasn't particularly close to Yoru. "Just acquaintances." "I'm Vignette. Nice to meet you, Kato-senpai." Vignette smiled kindly, impossible to dislike. Because of Gabriel, Vignette had never called Yoru senpai from the start, and it just stayed that way. Before the three could chat more, Satania came racing in from afar, hugging a massive watermelon like it weighed nothing. "Vignette. I've been looking everywhere for you." Satania wore a conservative black swimsuit, a hopeless expression on her face as she stood in front of Yoru but stared at Vignette. "Sorry." "Satania." Vignette forced a smile and motioned to the two beside her. "Who's this?" "Huh? Yoru?" Satania turned her head, froze, then jumped up in surprise. The watermelon in her hands was tossed into the air. Despite her small frame, she possessed ridiculous strength. The watermelon soared several meters high. Yoru and Megumi instinctively looked up, exclaiming in surprise. "Uh-oh." Realizing what she'd done, Satania ignored Yoru and leapt to catch the falling watermelon. The heavy, dark green watermelon came crashing down. Satania caught it effortlessly, causing both Yoru and Megumi to stare, dumbfounded. Satania was just born with insane strength. Her athletic ability is unusually good, too. Vignette tried to explain for her, so the two wouldn't be too shocked. After she spoke, she tilted her head in surprise. She could have sworn Satania didn't know Yoru. What was going on? Yoru and Megumi quickly accepted the reality. Tossing a big watermelon, even if a bit high, wasn't that absurd. Plenty of athletic girls their age could probably pull it off. Megumi looked at Yoru, then glanced back at Satania. Phew. Satania let out a breath and plopped down on the beach, openly staring at Yoru's face. No one found it strange. After a moment, she finally spoke and introduced herself to Megumi. "Hey, let's play watermelon splitting." Satania slapped the watermelon and looked at Yoru. "Hey, this is the perfect chance to get closer to Yoru." "Sure, I'm in." Bored anyway, Yoru raised his hand and agreed. Since he said yes, Megumi naturally didn't object. Satania picked up the watermelon and found a shady spot. During that time, Yoru continued to attract glances. He finally understood why. Walking around with three cute, energetic girls. Of course people were going to look. "You go first. Cover your eyes." Satania handed Yoru a thick wooden stick about the size of a forearm. Vignette and Megumi helped tie a blindfold over Yoru's eyes. Hee. Satania looked at blindfolded Yoru with a mischievous grin. "Gabriel's friend. Time for a little prank. It's just a game anyway. He has no idea I secretly moved the watermelon." When the game started, Yoru opened his eyes briefly, then shut them again. Stick in hand, relying on memory, he walked straight forward trying to hit the watermelon. Satania gave a silent SHH gesture, lifted the watermelon, and snuck it away. Vignette and Megumi were briefly stunned but chose not to say anything. There had been studies abroad. Once blindfolded, humans couldn't walk in a perfectly straight line. Even the best outcome would only keep you straight for a few meters before veering off course. Yoru was no exception. But he tried his best to stay balanced and feel his way forward. The watermelon's over here, right here. Satania stood to Yoru's left, hugging the watermelon and shouting loudly. Yoru heard the voice, tried to sense the direction it came from, and walked toward the right. After a few steps, he cautiously swung the stick toward the ground. The sand scattered with a dull thud. Not here? Satania's trying to give me a hint. Yoru adjusted his direction again. This time, he was actually facing Satania. That's right, right here. Satania grinned mischievously, showing her little sharp canine teeth. Vignette and Megumi simply watched quietly without saying a word. Suddenly, Yoru stepped forward in a big stride. He was trying to make sure he was walking in a straight line. And it worked. There was still some distance between him and Satania holding the watermelon. Yes, yes. The watermelon is right in front of you. Satania seemed extremely pleased, nodding repeatedly. Instead of backing away, she actually brought the watermelon closer to Yoru, standing right beside him, making silly faces. If Yoru could see, he'd probably find her more adorable than mocking. Satania had a petite figure, but unlike Hariri who was just skinny, her body had a soft fullness to it. Especially her hips. Actually, her whole body was plump and soft. Yoru swung again, striking in front of him, but still missing the watermelon. Nope, a little more forward. Satania's voice came from just inches away. Yoru's ears twitched as he tried to pinpoint the direction and followed the instruction, stepping forward again. It's hard for someone with their eyes covered to accurately judge where a voice is coming from. Unless it's really loud, sound direction is unreliable. He waved the stick a few more times like a headless fly, still not finding the target. Here. Left. Satania stood on Yoru's front left side, holding back laughter as she gave directions. Because of that one line, Yoru immediately lifted the stick and swung down hard. But left and right are reversed when you're blindfolded. Satania's left side was actually Yoru's right side. Besides, everyone knew that during a watermelon smashing game, it's dangerous to stand too close to the fruit when someone is blindfolded and holding a stick. No one would dare do what Satania was doing. Hugging the watermelon and shouting from right next to him. Wham! The stick came down. Yoru hadn't used full force, but it wasn't light either. It slammed right into Satania's head before she could react. Ah! Satania's grin froze. She dropped the watermelon, crouched down, and clutched her head in pain. Yoru sensed something was wrong and quickly removed his blindfold. Vignette and Megumi rushed over to check on Satania. What terrible luck. Satania teared up from the pain. Satania, I hit you? Yoru was stunned. Are you okay? Vignette asked with concern. It just hurts. Satania plopped down on the sand. You deserved it. Vignette looked at Yoru in exasperation and explained what had happened. Satania wasn't seriously hurt. After all, she was a demon. But she was injured. Naturally, the rest of the event was cancelled, and everyone returned to the hotel. Turned out, they were all staying at the same one. Satania, who brought it on herself, now had a big bump on her head. Yoru felt at least a little guilty and decided to stay with her for a bit. That night, no one went out. The four of them stayed in the hotel's theater room and watched a movie together. The next day at noon, they returned to Tokyo. On the way back, Yoru received a message from his dad reminding him about his health checkup. School would start in 3 days, and the checkup was scheduled for the afternoon of the day after tomorrow. Summer break's over, and I still haven't finished slimming down. With the end of summer break and school beginning again, Yoru pinched his own cheek. Chapter 83, Back in Tokyo. Well then, see you again, Yoru-kun, Megumi-senpai. Vignette waved politely. See you. Yoru and Megumi waved back. TCH. Satania crossed her arms, rubbing the bump on her head that still hadn't gone down, her face full of disdain. As a proud and mighty demon, the future ruler of the underworld, she couldn't accept that she had been defeated by a mere human. Satania was not happy. Satania, I didn't mean to hit you, and besides, you were trying to mess with me, weren't you? Yoru shrugged, not angry at all. Satania felt that what he said made sense and instinctively nodded. Then she realized something was off and quickly added, Humphrey, I won't let you off, Yoru. Later. Yoru smiled and ignored her protest. She was kind of cute anyway. He and Megumi left. Alright, Satania, let's go too. Vignette tugged on her. One day, I'll make him kneel down and lick my feet. Satania puffed her cheeks and stared unwillingly at Yoru's retreating back. If she had just said that directly to him, he might have agreed by now. Yoru and Megumi weren't in a hurry to go home and wandered around a bit more before parting ways near noon. On the train ride home, Yoru received a message from Gabriel. Gabriel's back? Yoru sat quietly in the corner, his hair down. Several girls in the carriage were secretly glancing at him and whispering. Another message from Gabriel came in, asking where he was and wanting him to come home. On my way back now, Yoru ran his hand through his hair and replied to Gabriel. At that moment, one of the girls in the car stared in a daze. After a few seconds, she tugged her friend and pointed at Yoru, whispering non-stop. When Yoru returned near his apartment, it was around lunchtime. He bought a bento from a nearby convenience store and headed back. As he approached his apartment, he heard Gabriel's voice. Over here. Gabriel was wearing a white dress, her hair neatly tied up, standing on tiptoes and waving. Yoru waved back and saw her standing in front of his door. Her outfit gave him flashbacks to their field trip days. He quickened his pace and returned to the apartment. You've slimmed down a lot. Gabriel's first comment was on Yoru's current look. I really have. Gabriel, what's up? Yoru took out his key and glanced at her. Well, I want to eat your cooking again. Gabriel handed him a shopping bag filled with ingredients. Who says angels don't get cravings? Oh, and while I was gone, my place had its water and electricity cut off. So right now, I don't have power. Then she added. Click. Yoru opened the door, and Gabriel walked in like it was her own place. That bag on your back. Where were you? I just got back from a trip. Spent a few days out and even ran into Vignette and Satania. Oh. Gabriel, barefoot with her pale white feet, ran into the living room and flopped onto the couch. She flipped open her laptop, pulled out the charger, plugged it in, and kicked her legs lazily while glancing around. Where's San-san? Gabriel twisted her waist and asked curiously. She's at my mom's place. I haven't picked her up yet. Yoru calmly changed into slippers and carried over a bag full of food that Gabriel had bought. All this seafood and meat. How do you want it cooked? Rustle rustle. The bag made noise as it was being opened. Just make it however you like. Cook it all. I also invited Nanami. She'll be over soon. While the laptop was charging, Gabriel couldn't wait and turned it on. Free reign? Then I'll go with something light to bring out the natural flavor of the seafood. Yoru carried the bag into the kitchen. With fully equipped tools, he took out all the ingredients one by one, washed his hands, and wasn't in a hurry. There was quite a lot of food. He needed to think about how to make it all delicious. He pulled out his phone and searched for some recipes before stepping back out. The trip had been tiring too. In the living room, Gabriel lay face down on the couch, kicking her legs in boredom while waiting for her game to finish updating. Yoru squeezed into the corner of the small couch. Gabriel stretched lazily and casually placed one leg, her white foot, on the inside of his thigh. Yoru, still focused on his recipe search, thought it was something else and reached over, grabbing it. It felt cool and soft. Just right. Gabriel yawned and kept playing Genshin Impact without caring. A while later, once he finished checking the recipes and settled on the dishes for lunch, Yoru's attention finally returned, and he looked down at his leg. The sight startled him. He quickly brushed Gabriel's foot off. Angel feet, for sure. Not stinky, smooth and soft. Why was I holding Gabriel's foot just now? Yoru blinked, clenching his hand as if trying to erase the memory. Gabriel had noticed the movement but had no clue what he was doing. She focused on finishing her in-game quest before glancing back. What's wrong? I accidentally grabbed your foot just now. Yoru admitted awkwardly, his eyes falling to her other delicate bare foot still resting on his thigh. Oh, I'm ticklish. Just don't scratch the soles. Gabriel casually turned her head back to the screen, her focus entirely on the game. Yoru's mouth twitched, his face helpless and a little bewildered. Reluctantly, he gently moved her cute little foot aside, then tied up his hair and walked into the kitchen to start cooking. First, he rinsed the rice and set it to cook. The octopus legs would go with peanut sauce and stir-fried with bell peppers. The head would be sliced into rings and used to make soup with shellfish and kelp. The mussels would be blanched, flavored with red wine and onions, then baked in the oven. The sea bass would be steamed whole. Yoru had already planned out every dish. He moved quickly. First, prep all ingredients to save time when cooking later. Just as he finished, Aoyama Nanami arrived. She gently opened the door and stepped in barefoot. She walked over to the living room. Gabriel, good afternoon. Nanami greeted Gabriel, who was locked in battle with the boss. Gabriel barely managed a response. Is Kitakami-kun in the kitchen? I'll go help. Nanami didn't disturb her and headed toward the kitchen. Kitakami-kun, let me help you. She called out as she approached. Oh, perfect timing. Aoyama-san, help me clean up the kitchen. I made a bit of a mess. Yoru had been fretting over the chaos left from prepping the ingredients. Cooking was enjoyable. Cleaning up afterward wasn't. No problem. Nanami peeked into the kitchen first. Yoru had his back to her, hair casually tied up. He looks so good. She couldn't help recalling that encounter on the stairwell and stepped inside. Right here. Thanks. Yoru wrapped the mussels in foil and placed them in the oven, setting the timer. Without turning around, he pointed at the sink. It was piled with fishy-smelling scraps and waste. Nanami wasn't squeamish. She rolled up her sleeves and started cleaning. Yoru focused on the sea bass. The scales had been removed, the fish cross-cut and marinated in seasoning, scallions, and ginger. He boiled water, added cooking wine and aromatics, and started steaming the fish. That should do it. Yoru smiled and went to wash his hands at the sink. He stepped beside Nanami and gave her a warm smile, glancing at her profile. His heated gaze made Nanami shuffle aside awkwardly, sneaking a glance back at him. The fish is a bit fishy. Use extra detergent. Yoru dried his hands and said plainly before turning back to the stove. Okay. Nanami nodded absent-mindedly. Then, startled, she almost gasped. Thankfully covering her mouth with her arm just in time. Yoru-kun looks even better than before. Ugh. It's like he turned into someone else. Splash, splash. Water kept running from the faucet. Normally frugal, Nanami didn't even bother turning it off. Because the current Yoru looked even more handsome than the last time she ran into him on the stairs. No exaggeration. His looks had practically doubled. Not until the sizzle of oil in the pan did she snap out of it. Nanami released her arm from her mouth and started breathing heavily. She couldn't even smell the fishiness anymore. Kitakami-kun. She softly murmured his name. Her legs were pressed tightly together, and her expression had become the shy look of a girl facing someone she liked. Her light brown eyes darted around, repeatedly glancing at Yoru's back. They'd known each other for a while and were already good friends. Nanami scolded herself. Was she seriously feeling shy now? Just because Yoru kept getting more and more attractive? Right now, Nanami seemed to finally understand some of the girls in their class. They acted bold and outgoing, but when faced with a handsome guy, they were desperate to run and hide. Once she finished tidying up, Nanami quickly returned to the living room. Gabriel, have you noticed how good-looking Kitakami-kun's become? Nanami sat on the small couch and sneakily glanced toward the kitchen. Yeah, so what? Gabriel absent-mindedly nodded, distracted by her game. You really only have eyes for your game, huh? Nanami got her answer, then peeked back toward the kitchen. Kitakami-kun's so handsome now. He definitely won't lack a girlfriend. I even doubted him before, just because of what Sorata-kanda said. Unaware of all this, Yoru was still in the kitchen, hard at work and completely unaware that his looks had reached their peak. He still lacked a bit of confidence, thinking he was just average. Half an hour later. On the small dining table. Yoru opened 3 bottles of chilled juice, handing 2 of them to Gabriel and Nanami. Steam rose from the dishes spread across the table. The mussels, baked in garlic, onion, and spices, gave off an irresistible aroma. Just the smell made your mouth water. Gabriel's eyes lit up, and she scooted her chair closer. Under the table, her soft white foot accidentally bumped into Yoru. I'm digging in. Nanami had been sneaking glances at Yoru the whole time. She picked up a piece of bass with her chopsticks. Yoru bent over and glanced under the table. There, 2 pairs of soft, bare feet rested directly on the floor. A total waste, he thought. That thought flashed through his mind, and Yoru quickly looked up and took a sip of his drink. The 3 of them had a pleasant meal together. After washing her hands, Gabriel leaned back on the sofa with her round little belly sticking out, completely relaxed. Nanami helped Yoru clean up the dishes before getting ready to head out for work. Bye-bye. Yoru walked her to the door. See you. Nanami gave a small nod. Truthfully, she could have stayed for another half hour. That afternoon, the water and electricity in Gabriel's apartment were finally restored, so she went straight back. Yoru sat on the sofa, smiling and gently shaking his head as he twirled a strand of golden hair in his fingers. The warmth and lingering scent left by Gabriel still remained on the seat beneath him. As evening approached, the heat began to fade. Yoru returned home and brought San back with him. At the same time, he was scolded and nagged by his parents, who urged him to go get his medical checkup done. School was starting in 3 days, and Yoru had already made an appointment. Back home, Yoru reviewed his lessons for an hour as usual, then closed the textbook he'd mastered and leaned back, hands behind his head. His long hair draped down, covering his unbelievably attractive face and reflecting in a mirror. Ah! With a light sigh, Yoru pulled out his yoga mat and began his regular workout. Jumping jacks. 300 reps. Mountain climbers. 10 sets. Planks. Russian twists. The bright moon hung high, stars scattered in the sky. Exhausted from traveling, Yaru quickly felt sleepy. Almost as if comparing something, he grabbed a bottle of sports drink and walked into the shower. He took a long, relaxing bath, then came out and scooped up San from the sofa, hugging the little cat in his arms. Meow meow. The chubby black cat blinked its eyes and meowed a few times. "You're sleeping with me tonight?" Yaru chuckled, gently scratching San's chin with his finger. "Whose kitten is this? So adorable," and he just happened to pick it up. August 31st. The day before school starts. After waking up, Yaru stepped on the scale on an empty stomach. 146. This weight is fine. I'm no longer in the obese range. If I could lose another 10 pounds, that'd be perfect. He ran his fingers through his hair and stepped off the scale. Standing there without a shirt,